I'm going to go ahead and call to order this meeting of the Santa Barbara School District Board of Education for Tuesday, April 4th, 2017. We've moved out of closed session, and at this point, we are going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. Mr. Matsuoka.
So if you're way in that second room, we're about to start the Pledge of Allegiance, so it'll probably be an echo, all right? Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Muy buenas tardes, bienvenidos a todos. Tenemos aparatos para interpretación en español, si gustan usarlos, aquí por estas puertas dobles en la sala de enseguida. Muchísimas gracias.
All right, and we do have headsets available for the hearing impaired. If you need them, you can ask at the side table. That brings us to item C5, introductions, proclamations, presentations, or recognitions. And Ms. Carey, I believe, do we have a student report today?
We do. I'd like to welcome Hassani Mahon to the podium. She is representing the secondary schools and is a student at La Cuesta High School. Welcome, Hassani.
And Hassan, if you want to wait just a moment for the space in front of the podium to clear, you can go ahead and go to the podium, but we'll have her start speaking when she can be seen by the camera. So we'll need to have a gap there for her while the student speaks, please. All right, if teachers want to hold for a moment so the student can speak. Thank you, we appreciate that.
Hello. Dos Pueblos High School will be holding a blood drive on April 20th from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. International Day activities are being held April 28th from 12:08 to 1 p.m. Athletic signing day will be April 20th from 12:54 to 1:24 p.m. In the month of April, social awareness activities will focus on alcohol awareness, child abuse awareness, sexual awareness, and prevention. San Marcos High School, the award-winning San Marcos Marginal Singers will be competing in World Strides Heritage Music Festival at the University of Hawaii from April 5th to April 8th. Annual spring senior class meetings will be taking place Tuesday, April 18th, 10:30 a.m. Disruptions of graduation information. I'm freaking out. I'm sorry, guys.
You're doing
Graduation
great.
information and items, senior week activities discussed, and other senior class information present. Royal Art Gallery open reception Tuesday, April 27th from 5 to 6:30 p.m. in the cafeteria. Each spring, the cafeteria is transformed into an art gallery to present students' paintings, drawings, sculptures, jewelry, and other unique items. The program in the CAF Royal provide Damn Yankees will premiere Thursday, May 4th at 7 p.m. in San Marcos Auditorium. This Tony Awareness winning musical will be performed with a live orchestra May 4th through the 6th. And also May 11th and 13th. with all performances beginning at 7 p.m. Santa Barbara High School, Tuesday, April 18th, is the blood drive at the J.R. Richardson Gym from 8 to 11:30 a.m. Students will be donating to the United Blood Service and will have the option to give their points they earned to Make-A-Wish Foundation. April 21st, there is a casual dance open to all students in the girls' gym from 8 to 10 p.m. April 7th and 8th is a choir spring concert from 7 to 9 p.m. Bullets Over Broadway will premiere April 28th and will continue with performances on April 29th, May 5th, and May 6th at 7:30 to April 29th, May 6th, and May 7th at 2 p.m. Thank you.
Little did you know you'd have such an audience, but thank you so much. And everybody appreciated it. We're going to actually jump the agenda slightly. I'm moving on to item C7, then we'll come back to the superintendent's report because we do have some closed session action to announce. First of all, on item B1, this was conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation. The board took action to approve a March 14, 2017 final settlement agreement and release between a parent and the Santa Barbara Unified School District, pursuant to which the district has agreed to fund and provide educational services to the student, and the student's parent has agreed to release claims against the district in exchange for educational services as specified in the agreement. The motion was made by Dr. Reed. It was seconded by Mr. Ulloa. It was a roll call vote with Dr. Reed voting aye, Mr. Ulloa voting aye, Ms. Sims-Moten voting aye, Ms. Capps voting aye, and Ms. Parker voting aye. We did not take action on item B2. We will do that later in the agenda. For item B3, public employment, we had 3 positions to be filled. First, the board moved to approve the appointment of Ms. Rachel Gonzalez Harris as the principal of McKinley Elementary School. There was moved by Ms. Sims-Moten, seconded by Mr. Ulloa, and the vote was unanimous, 5-0. Then the second position was for a secondary principal. We moved to approve the appointment of Bill Woodard as the principal of Dos Pueblos High School. That was moved by Mr. Ulloa, seconded by Ms. Sims-Moten, and that was a 5-0 unanimous vote. And finally, new to our district, we moved to fill the position of Public Information Officer, and this was to approve the appointment of Lauren Bianchi-Kleeman as our new Public Information Officer. It was moved by Ms. Sims-Moten, seconded by Mr. Ulloa, and again, it was a unanimous 5-0 vote. Welcome to the district. And there will be more on these new hires in the superintendent's report. In the meantime, we did not take action on other items on the agenda. And that brings us to item C6, the superintendent's report. Mr. Matsuoka.
So to our 3 new management members, you probably didn't know you'd have such a crowd here to welcome you and cheer you on. So we are really excited to bring these 3 people into their leadership roles. They all went through I would say a very rigorous and unusual process. We are using what's called a performance-based interview protocol, and it was unlike anything that they probably have experienced, and these 3 rose to the top in their respective positions. So we'll begin with bringing Rachel Harris Gonzalez forward. She's been a part of our district for a long time, has taught at Adams. I see Dr. Elzina out there cheering her on. And she's been an administrator in our district, and most recently has been the interim principal at McKinley. So welcome, Rachel.
Thank you. I also didn't realize there would be so many people here. You know, just a few months ago, I was standing here and I was accepting the interim position at McKinley Elementary, and At the time, I had no idea what I was getting myself into, and now I do. And I am very excited to be there, and I'm very thankful. I'm just honored that you chose me, because McKinley is an amazing school. I am able to jump in now. I've already been there, and so having this opportunity is just a blessing, because I know the people, I know the amazing staff, some of them whom are here, and I know the families and the children who are wonderful. In this time that I've been there, I've just grown to love the school. When I first stepped on campus, I really wasn't sure if I would stay or if I'd go back to Adams, which I also loved. But I know it's the place I'm supposed to be. So we're going to move forward, and we're going to focus on building relationships with families and with students. We're going to set expectations high for our children. We're going to have rigorous academic, eager students who are going to just thrive, and I'm very excited for that. I want every child at our school to look forward to college. I want every child at our school to look across the street at Santa Barbara City College and say, you know, that might be a choice for me. And we are going to do everything we can to get them there. So I'm really looking forward to this opportunity. I have to tell you that I have my son Jordan here, who said, Mom, if you don't mention my name, I won't mention it your name when they invite me to play in the MLB. So I also have my daughter Brooke, both of those who go to La Colina School, and then my youngest son Lucas, and my mom in the back, who I could not do this without her. So thank you, and I'm looking forward to this challenge and this exciting new chapter in my life.
Thank you very much, Ms. Harris.
The next appointment is principal of Dos Pueblos High School, and it was such a great process for me to learn about DP. I was on campus many times listening to the staff, received a letter of support for Bill, and it's just obvious that Bill has earned this position through his experience of teaching. He's been an assistant principal there, and following after Sean Carey is, for some, would be a scary thing, but I think for Bill, it's just natural. He has already stepped into that role as the assistant or as the interim principal. So we're really glad to have you, Bill. Thank you for applying, and we look forward to your leadership. So come on up.
Good evening, President Parker, members of the board, Mr. Matoka, Ms. Carey, Mr. Tarina. It's an amazing privilege and honor to be here tonight. I want to thank the board and Mr. Matoka for having the faith and trust in me to do the job, and to my faculty and staff for all of their support as I've served as interim principal. I promise to proudly lead DPHS with honor, integrity, enthusiasm, continuing to build upon the legacy that Ms. Carey helped create. I also want to thank my family who are here tonight. My parents-in-law are here. My daughter, Lila, who was just on TV last week herself. And especially my wife, Lindsay, a DPHS class of '93 grad, whose encouragement and understanding mean the world to me on all those late nights and multiple evenings throughout the year. It's a really exciting time to be at DP. We celebrated our 50th anniversary this year, and we are reminded over and over again by generations of Chargers, really, that as DP evolved, affectionately it was first known as Hippie High, and it's grown into an academic powerhouse in many respects. But at its core, it's always embraced a student-centered environment with a faculty and staff who embrace innovation. To share just one example, our homegrown seminar support program created by our faculty and our students, which builds in supports for all students during the day, was recently evaluated by the Gold Ribbon panel. And though we're not allowed to share the official results yet, it was encouraging. And they remarked over and over how impressed they were that DP students are encouraged to, quote, have ownership and take charge of their learning. And that it, quote, was immediately evident that it is a great place to be. I'm excited to start the next 50 years of DP's traditions and to lead it. And as I said back in December, to lead the hard but vitally important work we have, which is and we were committed to this work, to increase access to and success for all students in all of our wonderful programs at DP. From IB to DPA to arts to athletics, we want all students to find their place and leave us with the skills and confidence to make their mark on the world. DP alum Ben Rattray, who founded Change.org and was voted or nominated by Time Magazine as one of the 100 most influential people in the world in 2012, came back to DP for our celebration and said, "At DP, I learned how to be a leader. How the most important quality of being a leader is not the prestige or the power, but to be a leader in service of others." And that's the kind of leader I hope to be. So I'm excited for this opportunity. Go Chargers. Thank you very much.
Our third appointment tonight is the Public Information Officer, and I'd like to welcome up Lauren Bianchi Kleeman. And Lauren comes to us from nearby Ventura County. Her last role was to serve as Chief of Staff for Board of Supervisor, I can't remember,
Kathy Long.
Kathy Long, and Lauren was Chief of Staff for a decade for this elected official. So lots of experience in public policy, communication, and really served as a public information officer for a county supervisor and really the Board of Supervisors for Ventura County. So we're excited to have Lauren join us, and why don't you share a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself to your new district.
Yeah, thank you, Superintendent Matsuoka. And Board President Parker and the rest of the board, really thank you. It's an honor and privilege to join you tonight here and everyone in your community here, the teachers, and then also to be warmly welcomed by the district administration to join the team and family. Throughout this interview process, it was quite a rigorous interview process, but it gave me an opportunity to see the heart of the leadership. And I met a lot of people, and I was inspired by the vision of leadership that was shared by many of those that I met. This vision expressed a strong commitment to do right by every child. But there was also a recognition that vision is only as good as the ability to engage students, staff, parents, and the community. Now more than ever, it is truly an exciting time to be in education, a dynamic time. I recognize that effective and genuine communication plays a significant role to ensure every chance for every child every day. For those I have yet to meet, I look forward to build upon the district's rich history, to let my experiences as a youth services coordinator with the American Red Cross and over a decade in county management speak to one another. To listen to the community and take the district's communication to a next level as part of an overall positive, engaged leadership team. As with many of us, I stand on the shoulders of giants. I'm honored to have charismatic, engaged leaders who have mentored and inspired and encouraged me throughout my professional career. From meeting with Congresswoman Lois Capps about my future following graduating Westmont College, to serving as Chief of Staff for retired Ventura County Supervisor Kathy Long, whose legacy of 40 years of public service taught me a few things or two about effective communication. I'm also grateful for my family and that they were able to join me here tonight. I'm married into a family of educators on my husband's side, and my parents, both small business owners, taught me at a young age the importance of community service, YMCA, and the world of Rotarians. So here with me tonight is my husband, Dan Clement, the son of teachers, the brother of teachers, and in his daytime, he's Deputy Director of Long Range Planning for the County of Santa Barbara. My sister, Jacqueline Alexander, and my brother-in-law, Jason Alexander. Jacqueline also works for the County of Santa Barbara in the Office of the Clerk of the Board. I may be a little biased, but I think the district's greatest benefit in this arrangement is my daughter, Hannah, who at 3 years old, she adores school. Her favorite colors are pink and blue, and you can often catch her making music requests to listen to the Go-Go's. I must confess, this morning she asked me if there would be lollipops in this room. And thank you again for the opportunity to join you tonight and for the warm welcome and just really taking the time to share of yourselves too throughout the interview process. It really meant a lot to me and my decision to come here, and looking forward to bringing my family to be a part of this community. So thank you.
Thank you, and if you would like to make sure that there are lollipops here in the future, that can be part of your job description. Thank you all, and welcome to the district and your new jobs. If you've been with the district for a while, we are really looking forward to working with you in your new capacities and have a lot of confidence in what you're doing. So thank you, and thank you for going through what we're hearing is a pretty interesting process. So if you survive that, right, you can survive anything. That brings us to the item C8, board comments and correspondence. Board members, do you have anything that you would like to share at this time? All right, that brings us to C9, public comment, non-agenda matters within jurisdiction of the Board of Education, and I believe we have one speaker.
Yes, we do. We have Karen McBride.
Good evening, Mr. Matsuoka and members of the board, Ms. Parker, Ms. Reed, Ms. Sims-Moten, Ms. Capps, Mr. Uyara, and Ms. Carey and Mr. Torina. Thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight. Though I have, tonight I have the honor of speaking on behalf of the hardworking educators that are in this room, and thank you for coming, and also to the folks that are wrapped around the building and in the other room, and all 237 of you, or however many. I really appreciate you being here. So in my role as president of SBTA, I spend a lot of time visiting school sites to meet with these men and women, but one of my greatest challenges is finding time to meet with them, and that's because when I show up on their lunch break, they're often prepping and grading and always squeezing in a little more work to avoid bringing it home, but of course that never works, and they end up schlepping it home over weekends and holidays anyway. During their lunch breaks, they tutor, they phone parents, or they simply open up their rooms and their offices for students who need a gathering place. I sometimes show up when they are collaborating with great fidelity to their PLCs and their students. But I also hear their frustrations about time spent in scripted meetings when what they really need is more prep or collaboration time. So what do we want? Well, in many ways, everyone in this room, including the members of the board and the administration, want the same thing. We want to deliver the best educational experience to the students of our community that we possibly can. And to that end, these educators have shown over and over and over their commitment to work hard to continually grow and improve in their professional skills. We want to hire and retain the best and the brightest. There is nothing like being part of a dream team with people who push you to be a better professional every single day. And there's nothing like losing a team member who simply cannot afford to get ahead in Santa Barbara. 30 seconds. 30 seconds. What's worse is watching a dear colleague or friend who is continually squeezed for time and money, and to watch the damage that stress does to them. We are the purveyors of the product that this district offers to the public. We are on the front lines, interfacing with students and their families, delivering every single day. So there has to be a respectful and fair commitment by this district to make educators a priority. Let me say that again, to make educators a priority. Okay. I'm almost done. I'm only speaker, is this okay? Because supporting educators equals supporting students. It is now April. We have worked 3/4 of the school year without a negotiated settlement. Tonight, we want assurance that the board will authorize their team to show up to the bargaining table tomorrow morning and make a respectful and fair offer for salary and language. We have waited patiently and given the district the time that they have asked for, while districts all around us have settled their contracts. Tomorrow is the day that this board needs to show the community that they truly value the work that is done every day in our schools by the educators to educate and empower over 15,000 students. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have one more speaker. We have one more public comment. We have Sage Gaspar.
Hi, good evening to everybody. My name is Sage Gaspar. I'm a senior at Santa Barbara High School. I wasn't planning on speaking, but I just want to talk about all of the teachers that are in this room, many, some who are here who were my second grade teachers, my third grade teachers, my high school teachers, who have helped nurture me and helped me grow and learn as a person. I hate to brag, but I was just on the cover of The Independent. And it wouldn't have happened if it weren't for these teachers. And we need to keep these teachers in our district, and we need to treat these teachers with respect. The same way they have respected me and taught me to grow and taught me to learn and taught me to be a leader in my community. And so I'm here standing beside all of the teachers who have stood by me for the past 13 years at McKinley Elementary School, at Goleta Valley, at La Cumbre Junior High, and at Santa Barbara High School, who have just been so important, and they touch the lives of all of the students that they work with every single day, and they are so important, and that's why we need to treat them with respect. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with my fellow board members' permission, I'd like to just take a 2-minute break so that we can clear the room.
Can I make some comments?
Oh, yeah, wait, and Mr. Matsuoka would like to make a comment first.
So normally I don't make comments in response to public comment for items not on the agenda, but given the turnout and also just all of the hard work, I have asked for patience by the union about, you have a new superintendent, you have really a new school board, and I asked for time to, one, get to know the new board, for me to get to know the district budget. It's not a simple document, and I look forward to a really productive conversation tomorrow. So thank you for the patience. I appreciate you being here. We will talk about this tomorrow in negotiations. All right?
2 minutes. Okay, Thank you for your patience as we reconvene and move on to D on our agenda, acceptance of donations. And I need a motion to approve the donations for April 4th, 2017.
I move to approve with gratitude.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. And that passes unanimously. Moving to the consent agenda, are there any items that fellow board members need to pull? Ms. Sims-Moten?
Yes, I have 1 and 3, 9, and 13 and 14, but they're just quick questions.
1, 3, 9,
Then 13 and 14.
13, and 14. Okay, so we can come right back to those?
Yes.
Any others that need to be pulled? Can I have a motion to approve the remainder of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay, that passes unanimously except for the consent agenda items that were listed. So that moves us to, if we can do it really fast, we'll just do it quick. So E1 is the approval of student field trips out of state, out of country, or overnight. Ms. Sims-Moten?
Yes. The question that I had on that was I think it was saying 36,800, but when it comes down to item E3, it says 40 has a different amount, and I was just wondering where did I miss that? So right here, it's saying 36,800, but then when you go to item E3, it's saying about 40,000, I believe. Let me get there. I was just trying to see if it was the same trip or... So 46,000 is the impact there. But so if it's the same trip, then we have 46,000 on E3, but E1 it's saying 36,800.
And Ms. Carey, if you don't, or Ms. Jate, if you don't have the information on that, my suggestion would be that we go ahead and move approval and seek further information about it. Would that be reasonable? Because they're close.
Yeah, if I can get in 20 seconds, I've got them on.
It looks like it might be a difference in the number of students going, but...
It's also, well, there's also the difference of paying for the chaperones. So one, it says like the students are, this is the grad night that's associated with graduation. I'm trying to see if that accounts for the difference also, that there are more tickets than just student tickets, but on the field trip version of that event, it's about the field trip aspect of it and the student-funded component. So I just wanted to try to confirm that theory that I had, but...
Okay. And then on that same item, I think it's just a typo. We're showing that for the 19,000, it's in this SBHS when it's really for DPHS, right? It says DPS there, but on the report, it's saying...
Those schools are all correctly identified with the personnel. Where was the conflict?
On the report. Not on that piece, but on the actual staff report, perhaps.
I don't have a report document. Yeah, I was just looking also.
Okay. We can come back to it, but
Okay.
I just, on the staff report, it's saying 19,000 from SBHS ASB, but it's for the DPHS grad night. So I just was thinking that's a typo, or?
That's a typo.
Okay, right.
All right, so with that, are you willing to move approval of items E1 and E3?
Yes, and they're going to come back and find that discrepancy.
With the note that we're going to come back with explanation about the financial difference.
Yes, so moved.
Yes. Did you second? Second. Yes. I love that moment. Just do it. Yes. All those in favor? Aye. And that passed unanimously. And I think that we'll go ahead, and if it could be that 9, 13, and 14 will take a little bit more time, so we'll just talk about them at the end. That's fine. So that moves us to item F. This is the public hearing regarding the Peabody Charter School petition for renewal. Mr. Matsuoka.
So as required by the charter school process, we need to offer the community a chance to give comment about Peabody's charter renewal.
So with that, I'm going to go ahead and close this regular agenda of our meeting and move into a public hearing. And this is a renewal. And is there a lead on the slides?
Are these, Damien, are these the same slides that we presented to the board? Yeah, so
Okay.
we actually don't need to present the slides because you've
Because
already
we've already seen them.
these.
All right, so do we have any comments, public comment on this item? We don't have any public comment, I'm sorry. But that's okay. We will then go ahead and close public comment, close this public hearing, knowing that this will come back. Is it going to come back next month?
We'll bring back the question of approval of the renewal to the next board meeting.
Next board meeting, okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to close the public hearing, reopen our regular agenda, and move on to, flip my pages. G, the action agenda. First up is Olive Grove Charter School petition, staff report, and recommended findings. Mr. Matsuoka.
So to the board, we presented a fairly lengthy staff analysis. There were multiple contributions. There was our local law firm with Craig Price as the lead, and Craig is in the audience to respond to questions. I also got input from a consultant with the California Charter School, I can't remember the long name. It's a consultant that I know from my work in the Bay Area, and then some of my own analysis. I think broadly, I did appreciate visiting the center. It was good to see it. And I didn't want to make a recommendation to the board without actually seeing the space, and it's a good space. And I had a conversation with the lead teacher. Hi, and just had a nice visit with staff and students. The concerns that I identified in terms of the instructional program, I was surprised at the lack of material that was available through CDE, and this is for the charter that's been in place for, I believe, 14 years. I didn't understand why there wasn't data available and some key markers. It is also more of a secondary program. You can see that through the enrollment. It's definitely more of a high school environment. So, I have reservations about advertising as a K-12 when it's mostly secondary. I have a few issues with just some of the logistics. I mean, doing science labs out of town, as being a science teacher, that just seems really tough to send your students to Buellton to go do a part of your learning that's really fundamental. And then staff looked at the fiscal. Certainly, Craig Price's firm looked at some of the governance issues. So there's a broad overview. I think we'll take any comments or questions, and then is there any public, I'm sure there's public comment on this.
We have lots of public comment, but I want to give Olive Grove staff an opportunity to speak as well. Is this an appropriate time to go ahead? All right, so Ms. Mudge, I don't know if you have other staff members you want to have join you, but if you want to go ahead and come up to the podium, and I will call you up.
So initially, we were under the assumption, like last time, that we were going to just be able to fill out cards and speak. And so we kind of split up. Our responses, we sent you all the responses earlier. Did you need us to review those? Or has if everyone's had a chance to read and really dig into our responses, then we won't waste our time by reading them again, but
I think we've all read them, but I would love,
Okay.
what I would like to do is attach it to the record of this meeting.
Okay.
Which we can obviously do digitally. And if you have extra copies, if there are members of the audience that would like to take a look at them, if you
I do
wanna
have
just-
lots of copies.
You could just put some in the back,
And
so
did
that other.
you guys need a copy as well before
We
we
have
start?
ours
Okay.
here. Yeah. If anybody wants them, or they can just go to the back of the room, that's fine.
So our concerns are really for our students, and that's why we're here. We have been, this fight has, I shouldn't say fight, our passion is our school and our students don't have a voice. They really don't. As we know, we're their voice. Most of our students have a lot of issues that they've had to work through. They are not making it in the traditional system. I heard someone in here before say 15,000 students attend your school. In our Santa Barbara Learning Center, we're very small. We have 110. That comes to less than 1%, about a half of 1% of your students that are not making it and not able to navigate the larger system. Many of our students have been in and out of jail. They have been behavior problems at your school. They don't have people advocating for them. Some of them are pregnant, have children. When they come to us, they get a nurturing environment, one-on-one. We have requirements for the length of time that they're with us. However, they're additionally able to come more often, and we're like a family to many of these students. And that's why we are so small, because we want to help nurture these students and give them a future, whether it be college career. I know part of the report speaks to the low number of students that may be going on to college. I will tell you our program is very diverse. We can meet needs for students that aren't maybe going to a UC. However, we do have students going to the UC. My own daughter went through the school. She's been accepted to UC Irvine for next year engineering and UC Santa Cruz engineering through our program. She started as a freshman. My older two daughters were able to navigate through the traditional system, but my youngest had a lot of anxiety and many medical issues, so it was really hard for her to go daily. So we were an opportunity for her, as well as all the other students that we care so much about. And I get really emotional because these students really, my daughter has a parent who advocates for students throughout California, but these other students, they don't have a voice, and they're the heart and soul of our program, and our teachers are amazing. So when you hear working extra hours, our teachers, they ask to take on extra students if they see a student come in that they can tell that they can help. They also work later. Many teachers work late just to help that extra student and provide them with extra support. We're available on the weekends. We're available at night. We're available all day long. And they're probably laughing because they get students contacting them all the time. And she's a new mom. Allison's going to be a new mom. We have another lead teacher, but they still all care so much about this school. So I'm going to go ahead then and read a small part, and then we're going to have different people read different portions of our responses, just so it's on record. One thing to note, we are State Board authorized. Our program has been fully vetted by the State Board of Education and the California Department of Education. I work daily with the California Department of Education, responding to requests, paperwork, financials, just any questions they have, because we are the first independent study program that was ever authorized by the State Board of Education based on what this group does and the structures we have in place. So we're very proud of that, because we know we're changing lives of students that won't be able to come back into your program. They just won't. And they will, we don't know what will happen to them, so that's why we're here. So, dear Superintendent Matsuoka, President Parker, and board members, the purpose of this letter is to respond to the Santa Barbara Unified School District staff report and proposed findings, which is the report, recommending denial of the Olive Grove Charter School Santa Barbara OGCS Santa Barbara charter petition, and to demonstrate that the report does not constitute sufficient legal grounds to deny the OGCS Santa Barbara charter petition. The Olive Grove Charter School Santa Barbara petition meets or exceeds the legal requirements for a reasonably comprehensive description of all 15 required elements under California Code of Regulations, Title 5, Section 11967.5.1, and presents a sound educational program. In fact, the petition puts forward the same academic program and elements as found in the charter petition for Olive Grove Charter School, which was approved by the California State Board of Education on July 9th, 2015. We therefore urge the district board to reject the report and staff recommendation for denial, and instead to approve the Olive Grove Charter School Santa Barbara charter petition. And I have to take a breath. I apologize. I have been on a WASC meeting, which is very intense. I'm part of the team looking at another school, so I have not gotten a lot of sleep. I drove down here because I care about our school. I will be driving back up north of Paso after I leave here, so just trying to breathe. Okay. So we want to point out that the Education Code provides specific guidance to governing boards to approve the establishment of charter schools. Education Code Section 47605B states, in reviewing petitions for the establishment of charter schools, the chartering authority shall be guided by the intent of the legislature that charter schools are and should become an integral part of the California educational system, and that establishment of charter schools should be encouraged. And we already saw that you're getting a recommendation for approval for Peabody. No one showed up for their hearing because they already knew they were going to get approved. So I know for a fact that you all are charter friendly and recognize what an important and valuable part charter schools are to the education of all of our students. Okay, I'm going to skip that. I'm not going to read through all the ways that a charter school could be denied.
Thank you. And I would remind you that we have read the letter, so I would appreciate it if you
Okay, I wasn't sure how
wouldn't
much
read
of
the
this
letter.
you wanted
Yeah.
us to, okay. I didn't know if you wanted it on public record, what the letter said, or.
No, I want it digitally on the public record. So I want it
okay.
attached
I
to this. Yeah,
apologize.
that's okay.
Thank you
Yeah.
for clarifying. That
Yeah.
helps, because then I won't have to.
So if
keep
there's
reading.
anything that you want to add
Okay. I
about the school
misunderstood.
or about the program, about the petition,
Okay.
that would be
I
great.
think just really, I'm sorry that I started reading it. I
No,
was
that's okay.
misunderstood your intention.
We have that issue for some reason. I don't know what that is, but okay.
It's probably due to my not getting enough sleep the past few days and focusing on another wonderful school that I've been reviewing. Okay, so I guess in response to some of the things that Superintendent Matsuoka just stated, we would love to, right now, the reason we're in, all the students have to come to Santa Ynez is because Santa Ynez has been gracious enough to open up their labs for our students. And our students who want to go to the UCs make it every time. They don't miss. That's their one option to get to the UCs, and they are happy to do so. So we have a lot of structures in place, and our students are happy to travel if they need to. So we just wished we had had an open dialogue with the district so we could have explained some of the findings and could have helped you all understand our program, since we are, like I said, the first independent study program authorized by the state. They also had a lot of the concerns you've held, and but they've come out, they've talked to us, they're coming out again in a couple weeks. They're just so happy to see the students, what we're doing with them, and we hope that you will give us a chance to partner with us, because these students are your students. They're the students that your counselors are sending to us when they know that their needs are not being met, and it's a very small percentage, but that small percentage is who we are helping in your district. So we hope you will reconsider. We don't feel like, we've already given you 90 days to make a decision, so the request to bring back a different finding is really not legal, because if you're going to bring back a finding of approval, you don't need to have a finding for that, just for denial. And none of the reasons that were presented to you are legal reasons for denial. So we hope you will consider working with us.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you.
So I guess we're not going to recap because they already have it.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mike Fair. I'm the outgoing principal of the school and already handed the reins off to wonderful lead teachers like Allison and Santa Barbara. I'm moving my family out of state, but that's a whole nother story. I feel like I'm in a unique position to speak to this because unlike all these wonderful educators, I actually am also a parent here in the district. I've got a second grader at Washington. I've got a seventh grader at the junior high. So I love the traditional setting. I also taught at Santa Barbara High School for a couple years, and I'll always love the Dons. I've always feel an affinity and have fond memories of Santa Barbara High, certainly. That being said, I want to impart on you briefly a concern of mine of the culture that may be, in the wake of your outgoing superintendent. Again, I am in favor of any setting in which a student can thrive, which is why I've been at Olive Grove for almost a decade now. So I just want to, for one reason or another, he overzealously pursued, an agenda to sort of, I guess for lack of a better term, shut down our program. I could never say why, so I just want to make sure that as you move forward, and of course, Santa Barbara High, right, second oldest high school in the state, this district's been here almost 150 years. I want to impart on you that your philosophies and that the culture that you are cultivating essentially moving forward are not antiquated philosophies on education. Our students, of course, are the cousins and uncles and mothers and brothers and sisters of the students who attend your schools as well. So certainly this idea that, our community is interwoven into yours, it couldn't be, more true. So, that being said, I want to make sure that, this won't be the last time that you see these folks, basically. It might be next spring, it might be 2 years from now, it might be 3 years from now. But rest assured, this isn't the last time that you'll be handed this charter petition, right? So that's a reality that you need to face moving forward into the future. So hopefully with that, certainly it would be miraculous for you to overturn your decision tonight. I think that you can pay anyone $500 an hour to tell you what you want to hear if that's the agenda that you decide to pursue. But again, this isn't the last time that you'll see these folks. So whether that's next spring, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, I hope that you'll reconsider for the future, I guess. Okay. So thanks so much. And again, that comes from a place of loving the traditional setting for my own children, but loving our independent study, non-traditional setting for the kids that we work with every day. Olive Grove really does miraculous things, just like your schools do for a lot of students. And it's the new paradigm is certainly not going anywhere. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And actually, we're going to have public comment later. So if there's a public comment piece as opposed to like existing staff, we can, or administration that wanted to do that, we'll do that separately at the end. Mr. Matsuoka, I can move to board comments and questions at this point, if you want to respond to those. Or Mr. Price, if you want to be available. Do you have a mic handy? And I think that if, with the board's permission, I'll go ahead and ask a few things and make a few comments right off the bat. This is a new charter, and so it's a very different process for us than a charter renewal. And we have a lot more experience. I personally have a lot more experience with charter renewals, but we have had new charters come to us, both at the podium and planning things out ahead of time. It's a very different process between a renewal and a new charter petition. So I know that you originally started out as a dependent charter, and that is an absolutely collaborative process with the district. And that you moved to Cayuma because you sought out someplace that was particularly willing to work with you, but that is not a standard that we've ever, that I think is typical across the state. That typically charters are outside organizations that want to do something really different, and they bring, they build their own program, the petition comes to us, and we review the petition as it is. And so I never expected a collaborative process, even though I know that that would have been great, but that's what we would do with a dependent charter. The two things, I looked at a number of the findings here. The two things that I was most concerned about are, of course, the educational program and looking back at results. I understand that you teach, you're an alternative education setting, although I could not see evidence that you were actually an ASAM school. And I don't know, Ms. Mudge, if you want to answer that, but I didn't see you on the list of CDE qualified.
Through the process right now.
Okay, so you're not currently qualified, but you're in the process right now. Your SPE charter.
Correct.
Is what you're talking about. And so it's as Mr. Matsuoka and others had put into the staff report, it's concerning to actually have a charter that has a really extensive record, to not be able to see a lot about it. Also because it's evolved over time, and each time it comes forward, it's a new charter, it's not a renewal, and yet both in the charter petition and in this letter that you sent with it, it's this funky mix of we're new, we're not old, we are old, we're not new. And so that's challenging for, I think, us to analyze. I think it was hard for our staff to analyze. They had different expectations around it. So that's a huge concern for me. The other really big concern is actually the organizational structure. And I know that you are you're doing this because of a lawsuit, and when we talk about what the position our former superintendent took, I will note that the courts found that the way this was being run, and it's not just, obviously, because this was not about your charter, but it was about charters trying to run in this way, that they don't meet California regulations, and that they couldn't continue that way. And so you're trying to fix it.
Right.
But
and the state board approved us in that manner.
Right, the state board approved you in that manner,
Right.
And then the courts came back and said no. And you're trying to fix it, but the way you're trying to fix it, I feel like maybe it needs to be fixed legislatively before you attempt something like this, because my concern, and I'll tell you that a few years ago, we had a chartering organization want to open a new school here in Santa Barbara. And they had not gotten to the point where they'd submitted the petition, but they were having initial discussions with us. And we were watching closely what had happened. They approved, they were trying to open multiple locations at the same time, didn't have a lot of experience, but had success at what they'd been doing. And then they went to open a new high school in Ventura. Ventura County had approved their charter. And the week before school started, it all fell apart. And 350 students were without a place to go. And they had lost they didn't have schedules, they didn't have any place at their local high schools. It completely fell apart. And so I look at charter organizations trying to create new charters, essentially, in a rapid way, even though it's an old charter, it's a new charter, with an organization that is very funky. Like, for example, It's 4 charters across 6 districts. We used to be 2 districts right here. This is Santa Barbara Elementary and Santa Barbara High School District. And we had a charter that crossed both those districts. That was a K-8 charter, Santa Barbara charter. But they presented us with 2 charters. It was 2 charters for our 2 districts. And so I look at that and go, structurally, this just, it doesn't make sense. I don't know how you can have it make sense unless the state is able to figure out some way of doing that, or state legislation is able to figure out some way of doing that. Because to have 6 different districts, I just haven't seen, I've never seen this, work. I don't think it's been proposed before. And I've seen, I know that there are charter organizations that are in multiple districts, but they've rolled out slowly over time, and they've been involved in one district for a long time before they spread out. And so I just feel like the finding about the organization of this charter petition, I feel like it's not likely to be successful, and I would agree with the district on that. And then maybe this is a question for Mr. Price. In their response to the findings, there are a number of times where they say that we can't vote this way because of that it's not legal, or it doesn't follow ed code for us to make these findings or to vote this way. And I would appreciate it if you could address that.
Well, I would just have to respectfully disagree with those contentions. We're confident that the findings that have been submitted to the board for consideration are consistent with the law. It doesn't mean that you have to necessarily agree with them, which obviously the petitioner doesn't. But there are findings having to do, in particular, getting back to the earlier comments about the soundness of the educational program, about the governance structure, about the ability to successfully carry on the program. And as the staff report notes, there are serious reservations that are expressed with respect to each of those elements, as well as some of the additional elements. And if you don't mind, I'd also just like to point out, because I know this is very difficult for the board, as it was for staff, because of the sincerity of the petitioners and the staff and so on. But as I think you could see from a footnote in the report, this is by no means the end of the road, because last month the State Board of Education approved a waiver program where the geographical limitation that was the source of the Court of Appeal decision up in Shasta, which precludes operating multiple resource centers outside of the authorizing district. They're going to waive that educational code requirement and allow charters like Olive Grove to seek and obtain a waiver predicated upon submitting to the State Board of Education a plan that would bring the charter into conformity with the now legal requirements, so that people are just not thrown out, literally. And so something might be said further about the fact that all of the various requirements that are in the education code that talk about what needs to be reviewed and presented in considering a charter are all aspirational, meaning they're meant to apply to new charters. We can't expect anyone to review the academic success of a new charter which has not been operating. And so instead, we're asked by the Education Code to look at the plans that the school has. And of course, those plans were laid out in this charter petition. very similar to what was laid out, almost identical, 2 years ago when it was turned down by the County Office of Education and then went up to the State Board. But in this case, you know that Olive Grove has been operating for a significant number of years. And you know that the law also requires that when a charter has been operating for more than 4 years and comes in for a renewal, that it's the responsibility of the authorizing district to evaluate the outcomes, the educational outcomes of the charter. The Education Code noting that growth in student academic performance is the most important factor in considering a renewal. And I raise that because there is virtually no information concerning educational outcomes that was submitted with this petition. And of course you know that there's a long track record. Nor is there any indication in the petition that it views itself as an alternative school. That may well be the case, but all your staff had to go on in reviewing the petition was the contents of the petition, not other things that were apparently distributed last night. My point, though, being that because it's not the end of the road, that when Olive Grove does come back, as one of the speakers indicated that certainly they would, I would think it would be very important to you as a board and to your staff to have there be a significant amount of detailed information presented with respect to actual academic outcomes and explanations that are tied to those outcomes if indeed Olive Grove is going to be determined to be an alternative school. So I think that those are important points. And the last point I would make that was pointed out in the petition or in the staff report is that because this is not a new charter, it's a continuation of existing programs with largely existing staff, with the existing executive director, with the existing nonprofit mutual benefit corporation, and so on and so forth, that the Education Code says that before you can come in and make a material revision of a charter, in other words, go from the State Board of Education or the State Board of Education through Cuyama to 4 or 6 different districts, that you're supposed to go back to the charter authorizer and seek their approval. And that wasn't done here, and so we pointed that out. It didn't meet the Ed Code. And we have no idea what the State Board of Education would have done, especially considering that no one has ever evaluated academic outcomes for more than the last 5 years. So in sum, and with, I know, sadness on the part of your staff, it does not appear to the staff that there is adequate support to make the findings that would allow the approval of this petition. And indeed, there is a significant amount of evidence to support the recommended findings against authorizing the petition.
Thank you. Board members. Mrs. Bowden.
Yes, being new to this, but I was really confused whether it's new, whether it's a renewal, and are the rules differently, as you just explained, in terms of it being renewal versus being new. So I was really confused on that, and so didn't know which direction to go, other than I don't think it's ready at this point, and in terms of what things need to be cleared up, and that was very clear. I was very clear through that explanation, and it made much more sense to me that my initial thought was, I'm not sure that it's ready at this point because there are too many things that need to be corrected.
Ms. Capps?
Yeah, just agree. And so thanks for the clarification. I had the same issue of can we rely on your track record, which you've done a very wonderful job of explaining to us and talking about the students and the circumstances by which they come to your school, and it's all very, very compelling. But can we then evaluate that, and where are the metrics, and what are the academic records, and so sort of this flipping and flopping of well, no, we can't, because this is a new petition. I just think clarity going forward would be very advantageous strategy-wise. Also, just to note too, I really picked up on the English language, English learners, and potentially some need to have more of a structure there, especially in this district. That would be a high priority. So that was just something that stood out to me in the report. I'm glad that that was referenced. So,
Dr. Reed?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that I can hear your passion, and you strongly believe in what you're doing, and I think there's potentiality here. But, and like you said, you're going to come back. And if you do come back, again, the strategic plan and laying it out, and it needs to be more transparent. And we need to see the plan that you have, how it's going, the outcomes that you will achieve for your students, because ultimately we understand that they went there and they attended your school because they did need that support, and you offer those wonderful relationships and support to them and curriculum. But if we want to support this, we have to see the evaluative measures and the outcomes for potentiality for these students. We have to think of these students and the future of them as well. And I agree with the challenge of whether it could be successfully implemented at this time. So my belief is that you've got a great, school. You've got great potentiality, but you need to kind of go back and lay it out and show us how you can really take this to the next level, meeting all the ed policies that need to be met. But I hear you, and I hope for the best for the students, and if they do return to us, then I think we need to take it on ourselves to make sure that they can assimilate back into our program if that comes to the case. But I think we're here for the students. We want the best for the students.
Mr. Ulloa?
And again, I'm new to this as well, but just from my experience with doing grant funding and with Wendy and other entities, it is important to dot your I's, cross your T's, et cetera. And I have seen in the past where I've gotten applications one cycle, and it wasn't the most impressive thing, even though the mission itself might have been just so worthy. But when you have just this petition to go on, or you just have your application to go on, it can be hard to make that determination. And I really hope that this isn't the last time we see you, regardless of what the decision is tonight. And I encourage you to keep working on it, whatever it is. And I always say there's no such thing as a wasted moment as long as you learn from it. And hopefully that's the attitude we walk away with today, so we're able to move forward together eventually and really create a relationship later on. So thank you for you guys' time.
All right, and we do have further public comment at this point, I think, that we will go ahead and take, and it's kind of a mix of people that have already spoken. So if you've already spoken, then Dr. E can skip over you, but she'll just call.
Say one last thing, just in reference.
You need to come up to a mic.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just wanted to respond to the legal really quickly. We are working with Young Mini and Core, and as referenced before, the state board. And so upon working with them, their understanding and what they've always done, and this is an unusual case because of how the laws have been changing in interpretation. So what we submitted to you was a new petition. Of course, there was misunderstandings apparently, and we would have been able to provide more. materials about the history of Olive Grove, if that's, but we were, it is a fine line because we are submitting a new petition, and we do have some history. Last year, students were coming throughout the year, and when we tested, some students were with us a month, 2 months at that point, because we started with only 100 students last year, and by test date had closer to 200, so a lot of those students had just come in probably November, December, January. And we had a history, was referenced in our petition. The last time our API score was calculated, we did have a 9 on similar schools, so we're very proud of that. And we had a 5 overall in relation to other schools. So, APIs are no longer used, but the last time that an API was actually calculated for our school, they were very high. And that is why the state board authorized us. So had we known that you needed more of that data, I think that what happened why you couldn't find the data, unfortunately, was Los Olivos was gracious enough to let us retain the name Olive Grove Charter School. And when they did that, they created a new charter school called Los Olivos Charter School. And at that point, all of our data transferred over, and I've even looked up to try to find the old data that we had, and I was unable to. So I understand how confusing that is and frustrating, because it's frustrating for me as well, because it's hard for me to pull up from our past as well. Now I wish I had kind of asked our legal team not to come to this, but I kind of wish they had, because they were very clear that just saying, oh, well, we're going to go off of this one score, so, or, the findings in here were not legal requirements to be able to deny. So I really wish our team had come. They are obviously really knowledgeable in this, but I do want you to know we do have data. We would have been able to provide you whatever you asked. So I wish we'd been able to work together more.
Thank you. All right, we have quite a list, so we're going to have to keep the public comment to about a minute a person, unfortunately, because it's a long list. So, Mr. Rouse, if you're ready for that.
All right, so I'm going to read 3 names at a time, and if you could just go up to the podium so we can do this seamlessly. And here we go. Jesse Leyva, and we have Valere Wilson, and we have Delia Garrett. And I'm sorry that if I mispronounce your names.
That's good. Okay, I'm going to read quickly. My name is Jesse Leyva. My background, I'm from San Ynez Valley. I was a principal.
Could I ask you to go up to the mic? Yeah.
I was a principal in Goleta, district office administrator, principal in Solvang School, and principal at Olive Grove School until about 5 years ago. But one thing I want to talk about today is just a little bit quickly here, because I know I have a very short period of time, about a win-win. I said, first of all, we've had a pretty symbiotic relationship with Santa Barbara School District. We've taken a lot of kids who are at risk of dropping out, and we've reduced the dropout rate here at the district.
30 seconds.
Something else here. What happened? Oh.
It's me. So when you hear this voice coming out of the ceiling, it's me telling you how much time you have.
Okay. So I just lost time.
We'll give you back 5 seconds.
Thank you. 10. Anyway, so again, another outcome of granting this petition could be that annually you could receive 1% of our general revenue. And based on the Shasta-Anderson case, I suspect that if you do not grant the petition and Olive Grove has to leave, you're going to fill a void, and the charter schools in the contiguous counties will fill that void, no 1%. I also sit on the board for Charter Schools Development Center. They were formed much earlier than Charter Schools Association. So anyway, thank you very much. So I hope you've taken that into consideration.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Valerie. I'm a senior at Olive Grove Charter School. I've been attending this wonderful school since freshman year. In 9th grade, we sought out this school because I was swimming constantly, morning practice, afternoon practice, weekend practice, swim meets every weekend. And so that's when we found this school. And I just think it's wonderful because it offers me the ability to take control of my schedule, which I think is an option every student should have. Don't get me wrong, I have friends at Santa Barbara High, DP.
30 seconds.
Yeah. They're great. I'm not saying Olive Grove is better. It's not worse, but it's different. And I think, it's 2017. Education should be evolving. Students should have options. And not only does Olive Grove offer that option, it's a wonderful option. So thanks to the school and thanks to these teachers, I've been able to swim to my heart's content. I've been able to take college courses since freshman year. I participated in all their clubs, all their electives they offer, and I think it's amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
As she's walking up, I'm just going to say Helen Grace Halpin will come up next, David Edwards, and then Michelle Winters.
Good evening, board members and guests. My name is Delia Gardnett, and I've been involved in education close to 40 years of my career. I have been a teacher and an administrator for the Santa Maria Bonita School District for 35 years. I've worked with many students, parents, teachers, and administrators in my career. I retired 3 years ago, and now I'm working for Olive Grove. I also worked for UCSB as an admissions reader for incoming freshmen. But I wanted to tell you a little bit about my student I had.
30 seconds.
Who stopped attending high school because of hard times adjusting to social drama. It affected her so much she got failing grades at the end of the quarter and refused to return to school. Her mother enrolled her at Olive Grove, and she has not missed a week of school and is receiving A's in all her subjects. Basically, Olive Grove gave her a second chance.
Thank you. So you can actually tell there's a flashing light on the podium. So when it goes red, that means...
Okay, hi everyone, good evening. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to speak with you today. I'm sure that you will all agree that everyone has the right to learn, and educating our children is our main purpose, which means that we cannot deny anyone who wants to get an education, correct? This is my first year teaching at Olive Grove. I have a credential in math. I taught math in the classroom for several years. I have a passion to reach every single student in my classroom to learn the math concepts. I use several teaching, okay, let's face it, not everyone can function in a classroom setting. It just does not fit their learning style. And that's where Olive Grove comes in. Remember, our goal is to provide an education to every single student. Olive Grove Charter School is an alternative. It is a choice that students and parents make to enroll in our program. We are an independent study school, and with this type of program, we're able to give our students one-on-one support. Yay!
So as David's walking up, we have Sahar Gillison, and then Victor McConnell, and then Don Wilson.
Hi, my name is David. I've been a teacher at Olive Grove for about 7 months. I spent most of my career in private industry, where we have a saying, I'm sure you've heard, that the customer is always right. Obviously, the customers of your school district are your students. When I read from your strategic plan that you, quote, always put students first, and that you seek to, quote, meet the holistic needs of students, and when I read your district slogan, which is, quote, every child, every chance, every day, I get the impression you work hard to keep your customers' business. At Olive Grove, enrollment has increased in just the last year by 175%. Most students we receive at Olive Grove come here for a variety of reasons, but in general, it is because their needs are not being met elsewhere. I was surprised to hear a district which professes to have such a great concern for every student would pass an opportunity to partner with a school as caring as ours. After reading your response to our petition, I get the impression your district may not care too much for our school, but many of your former students do. And as I mentioned earlier, the customer is always right.
Hi, my name is Michelle Winters, and I've been teaching for 20-plus years in the classroom, and this is my first year teaching at Olive Grove Charter School as a lead teacher. I just want to give you a testimony of one of my students that I first got last year in March. She came in with anxiety, on medication, failing grades. But now she is working full-time. Her life has changed. She's not on anxiety medication any longer. She's happy. She's joyful. She loves coming to school. She only has to be in the at our school for, an hour a week, but comes in just to see us, to see the students that are working there and work there with us. She is now has a 3.0 grade point average, and she is thriving. She thinks she's ready to go back into her senior year to a regular high school. So she came in from the high school, Santa Maria High, failing, but now is ready to go back. She's learned a lot and is ready. So I just think our school offers that for many students in our community. Thank you.
I see the timer, so I'll keep going on that. My name's Victor McConnell. I was born without my left arm, and I didn't really feel different from anybody else until I got to high school. And being in high school, that was really hard to feel alienated. People would like to pick on me. And that hurt my grades. And I ended up going to Olive Grove. And while going to Olive Grove, I also had a major back surgery that also put me out of school. So I was kind of there for two reasons. And I kind of fell in love with the school. I really liked the teaching method and working one-on-one with the teachers. And then when I graduated, I ended up coming back as a board member. So I'm able to continue to see this impact that these teachers are making. And I volunteer my time to help mentor their robotics club as well, because I really like being part of that one-on-one connection with the students and ensuring that their education is the best that they can get. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sahar Gullickson. I met you guys last time. This is my first year at Olive Grove, my 6th year teaching. I'll be really, and you met my 2-year-old last time. He was screaming in the front row. But anyway, so very briefly, I have gotten quite a few students like this, so I'm going to tell you a quick story. This year, a few months ago, I got a junior. I took a look at her transcripts coming in. She has 30 credits. That's very typical of a lot of students that I get. So her first meeting, I'm like, wow.
30 seconds.
So she comes in, we talk, she's like, listen, I really want to graduate, I'm committed, I will do this, I promise. It took her a few weeks to kind of get into it, but she has been doing fantastic now. She's made every meeting, she's doing all of her stuff, and I gave her a pretty heavy course load because she needed to catch up. So I asked her, I said, why are you doing so well now? And she said, honestly, she said, when I was in a regular classroom, she goes, I just couldn't do it. She's like, I couldn't concentrate, it wasn't for me.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So we have Brian. As she's walking, we have Brian Paricio, Allison Longworth, and then Allison Reed.
My name's Dawn Wilson. I'm a parent first and foremost, and now I work at Olive Grove Charter School, and I have a horrible cold. I just want to say you're wrong, and it's that simple, and you're making a mistake. And we have the ability to take children that you have 15,000 students, is what I just heard. We have the opportunity to focus on one at a time, and that's your responsibility and our responsibility, and it's what we do really well. And we might not have all of the things you're looking for, but in today's education, things aren't looking that great anymore. There's no time one-on-one. You're spending all this time on classroom management and not the one-on-one. These kids do not have parents at home giving them one-on-one. And that's what we do. And I'm going to say this again, you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong on what you're doing. But that's okay. We will not go quietly, because not only Laura has passion, but every single one of us here has passion. And we'll take this as far as we have to go for every single one of the students that we have. Because you're wrong and we're right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm saddened by the news that you're recommending our charter to be denied. Last time I was here to speak in favor of charter petition, I told several stories of students served well by our school. These students were not being adequately served by your schools. I have a transgender student who does not feel safe or comfortable in the public schools around most of his peers. A school you operate and oversee has not met the needs of this student. Your school failed to create a safe environment for a vulnerable kid. What would you say to this boy and his mother if our school was shut down by your refusal of our petition and not available to catch the students that fall through your cracks? School was a traumatic experience for this child, and he would refuse to go. I can only assume that without Olive Grove, he would be on a course towards dropping out. So why would you not support our efforts to help this student and so many others? I doubt it's because you don't care, but if this really is the case, that you care about all of our students, if your mission statement does not ring hollow, that you indeed do endeavor to ensure the educational success of all of our students, then you must accept our charter. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Allison Longworth, and I've been an alternative educator for many years all across the country. And it's been an honor and a pleasure to serve the students at Olive Grove and to see them strive for greatness and thrive in the independent study environment. We serve students from all walks of life and experiences. From the tennis player that needs a more flexible schedule to the student suffering from anxiety in a traditional classroom setting. We meet the needs of these students and many like them. We have received countless positive testimonials from parents and students who often say they wish that they had found us earlier. I am proud and privileged to be part of an amazing organization, and I continue to serve the students and that walk through our doors looking for something different and a little bit more special. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Allison Reed, and Superintendent Matsuoka, it was a pleasure meeting with you earlier. I only wish that when you were at our Learning Center, I could have shown you some of our students' Renaissance tests from when they first came into Olive Grove this past year to now. In 4 or 5 short months, they've achieved so much in their reading and math, and that's the way we assess them. I know you guys do as well, and it's amazing how much they've grown. I wish I could have shown you that. I do want to talk about one of my students who came to us. I had her older sister about 5 years ago. She came to us because
30 seconds.
Her older sister ended up going, off to college. She was amazing, one of my favorites. She was in my art class, my cooking class. Her younger sister came to our school because unfortunately her older sister passed away this past June. She could not handle being in the everyday classroom environment. She had so much anxiety, so much grief. Because of our program, we afforded her the ability to come one-on-one, and then she got the chance to go to South Africa, blossomed, had an amazing time, and returned to your school.
Thank you very much.
So we can serve all of our children together if we just work together that way. Thank you.
So we have 2 more, Kristen Keinert and Mike Fair.
Hi, my name is Crystal Keinert, and this is my 6th year teaching at Olive Grove. I started off teaching at DP, and just wanted to give you a little bit of background on Olive Grove. I'm not sure if you know, but we have been in Santa Barbara for about 15 or so years, and that was under the Los Olivos School District. And the Los Olivos board decided for budget reasons mostly to not renew our charter and to try to get rid of us, so we decided to go independent.
30 seconds.
So we had this independent petition, went before all of the local districts, took it to the county, you know all of that. So we now have a charter that is sponsored by the state. So that's a new charter, and we are now trying to start a new charter as well. So we do have a lot of history, a lot of background, but there's been so much fluctuation with our staffing and our students that the data is very different. And one last comment, I had a, what was she, 9th grader?
Thank you.
Sorry.
All right. Well, I did already speak. I'll be brief. A couple quick rebuttals, although, the CMO structure is really common these days. I would say that while I'm optimistic certainly about your new appointment, Mr. Matsuoka, I think your own district is probably over 50% 7 through 12 students as well. So, our elementary program is growing a lot. But I would just like to say that you're not a new leader, you're a new leader here. I've read some articles, one that you had with the News Hawk, even one that I believe Miss George Gordon
30
wrote
seconds.
about you at your last district, some very nice things to say about your legacy and the things that you did where you sought out opportunities, you sought to help, foster youth, immigrant families, those underserved and underprivileged communities, historically anyways. Do that here too. Thanks.
Thank you. Board members, any further questions? All right, this is before us for action tonight, following the Ed Code timeline. And so I do need a motion. Staff recommendation is to deny the petition. Board members. Chirp, chirp.
I neglected to say thank you for the passion that actually that showed here in the students, and it is for that love of students that we're here. But just as I said, in terms of just understanding the infrastructure, which is why I'm making this motion, and that's the only reason I'm making this motion. So moved.
I second it. Any further discussion?
Madam President?
Yep.
Just a little technical point. I would recommend that the motion include adoption of the recommended findings.
All right, so Ms. Sims-Moten, if you want to start over that to move to deny the charter petition and adopt the
recommended
findings.
Do I just say so moved, or should I repeat that? Motion to deny the motion and to adopt the staff recommendations.
I second it. Any further discussion on that? So the motion is to deny the petition and adopt the staff recommended findings. All those in favor? Aye. And that passed unanimously after a motion by Ms. Sims-Moten and a second by Dr. Reed. Thank you. And with that, we will move on to item G2, approval of elementary school safety plans 2016-2017. That is Dr. Wagenknecht.
Good evening, Ms. Parker, board, Mr. Matsuoka, and my colleagues. I bring forward to you for action the elementary school annual school safety plans for 2016-17. I know that you've had an opportunity to review the plans, and so I'd like to take any questions or comments that you might have at this time.
Mr. Ulloa.
And I love the opportunity to read all these safety plans. I mean, there's no other way I want to spend my weekends, I swear. It was very informative. One question I did have about the Cleveland one, I noticed that was broken up into 5 different attachments. Just wondering.
Yes. I would love the opportunity to address that. Mr. Sandoval, who I have great esteem for, he used the former template. So for many years we used, Mr. Trina is nodding his head, a very cumbersome large template. And so Mr. Sandoval submitted that, and I didn't have the heart to ask him to go back to his committee and rewrite using the much shorter template. So that's why that is so comprehensive in nature. He is aware of the shorter template and will be using it moving forward.
I do want to add that even as long as it was, 120 some odd pages, I did appreciate all the information. I learned a lot from it. So
okay.
If you see
I will pass
Mr.
that along to
Sandoval.
Mr. Sandoval.
Ms. Capps.
I have a basic question. Again, I read these from the eye of a parent thinking, okay, how is my kid staying safe? And it feels to me, and this, again, this is just procedural question, that some of this is kind of checking a box because these are so cumbersome and citing code that no one would ever know. Is this, if that's the case and we need to do this because of law, that's great, but is there another then version that's accessible so that it, like what just happened in Washington, people know, okay, here's the plan, you know?
Right.
So I'm just trying to understand the purpose of these because no one else other than us and the folks that prepare them would actually take the hours that it takes to read through them. And that's, if that's what it is, I get it. But if what else is there that, or could there be something that's much more accessible to people who want to know about safety and rules and et cetera?
Right. I think that's a really good point, because while some of this is dictated by law of what has to be in there, there is a lot of information in each of the plans that would be good for families and community members to be able to access. These do all go on the website.
Right.
But I think that's something we can definitely, one, talk to principals about how are you communicating this out to your community.
Right.
Are there ways that you're doing that? But also work with, it could be with our new PIO to do one-pagers or documents that are accessible to the families that are kind of snapshots of the important pieces of this. Yeah.
And I point to Washington had a really great chart of the staff and where they go in case of emergency. It was a visual that was that stood out because of its accessibility. And again, just in an age of lockdowns and sexual assaults and things that are very frightening, the citing code just doesn't cut it in terms of communicating the plans themselves.
Right. Parents don't want to hear ed code when they're
Right.
concerned about their children. I think we had that several weeks ago up at Washington with the lockdown. Parents, there were some who were like, why didn't you do the call out earlier? And I said, well, they were actually searching the classroom. So when families know, here's our process, and then we'll follow up with you. Yeah, that's it's easing folks' angst.
Yep.
So
maybe in future processes that can be something that's advised or
right, or maybe attached the parent communication of the community piece attached along with this report, which is really what the school needs in order to carry out the safety pieces.
And I just agree on the Cleveland. I mean, it was just some rather extra information that was included.
Yes.
So I'm glad that that won't be the plan going forward. Thanks.
Any other comments or questions? I do need a motion to approve these. Elementary.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Dr. Reed, seconded by Ms. Sims Moten. All those in favor of approving the elementary school safety plans for 2016-2017, say aye. Aye. And that passes unanimously. Moving on to secondary, Dr. Wagenknecht.
And I now bring to you the school safety plans for our secondary schools. And again, I welcome your questions or comments.
Dr. Reed.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that in looking at these plans and the secondary plans, I was really impressed with not just the boilerplate when it came to the bullying strategies, and I noticed in Dos Pueblos that they had specifically had components for positive school culture listed. So there was actually not just, bullying policy we adhere to, but actually a plan of attack as to how to deal with situations. That was the same with La Cuesta, having a social climate plan, and just to call out La Cumbra, who had focus goals that were to implement more student-suggested ideas and plan more anti-bullying in school spirit activities. So to me, those types of dialogue, this type of information would be something that a parent would love to see, that it's talking about practical application to what we're talking about when we're dealing with anti-bullying strategies. So I just wanted to commend those schools in providing those types of frameworks for us to see.
Thank you. And I think that's a reflection of schools that really put an effort into looking at their data, looking at their Healthy Kids survey and other data pieces, and changing the culture, affecting the culture of their school, and again, not having it be boilerplate. And that's what we're encouraging. And so thank you. I'll pass that along to those sites.
Any other comments on the secondary? Is there a motion?
I move to approve the emergency plans for the secondary schools.
Second.
That was moved by Ms. Capps and seconded by Ms. Sims Moten. All those in favor? Aye. And it passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is now item G4, the approval of memorandum of understanding with the California School Employees Association and its Santa Barbara Chapter 37. Mr. Sciarrino.
President Parker, esteemed board members, Superintendent Matsuoka, I bring for you an MOU that was worked on March 20th between the district negotiating team and the California School Employees Association, CSEA, Chapter 37. The agreement is actually, this is language that they brought to us. We've had a very collaborative and collegial relationship with our CSEA, and this is just another testament to that. And our recommendation is that the board approve the MOU. Any questions?
I will comment that I love the CSEA, and I know the CSEA loves the SBTA. And so thank you I appreciate that they do it this way. I also really appreciate, the partnership that SBTA brings to the negotiating table. So it's kind of a win-win.
Yes.
Any comments or questions on this one? I do need a motion on it.
I move to approve the memorandum of understanding with the California School Employees Association and Santa Barbara Charter 37.
I second it. Moved by Mr. Ulloa, seconded by Dr. Reed. All those in favor? Aye. Passing unanimously.
Thank you.
Item G5, discussion and approval of Buck Institute for Education proposal. Ms. Carey.
Good evening again. I would just refer back to the report we heard earlier this term about the professional learning overview. One of the things that we have planned that is coming up is the June days, the June PD week, is what it's been recently traditionally referred to as. And I'll also just remind everyone on the board that we yesterday had our second student-free day where students were not in session, but that teachers across the district engaged in professional learning opportunities of a varied nature that conform with the overview that was provided earlier. In our June offerings, we actually, compared to recent past years, are setting our sights, Dr. Ramirez and I, on not so much striving to provide some offering for all teachers, but rather fewer, more robust, and deeper offerings, some of which are very much subject specific, and others which would really be more universal in appeal and in application. One of those is the project-based learning that we'd like to offer our teachers as a way to, for some, become introduced to project-based learning, and for others to deepen their experience and application of project-based learning. Project-based learning is not new in our district. There are cadres of teachers and certain school sites that have really been pioneers of project-based learning. Project-based learning is lauded for its highly student-centered nature. It really belongs to kind of a broader group of pedagogy, which I would call process-based learning. So we sometimes hear about inquiry-based learning, problem-based learning, project-based learning. But if I had to give a quick tutorial about it, it would be that as opposed to doing a project at the end of a unit to summarize or culminate a student's learning, project-based learning is really about the premise, is founded on the premise that learning takes place through the project and the phases of the project that the student's engaging in. So You will become more and more familiar over time with our school district's work, TK12, with Innovate Ed, a consulting firm that is helping us with strategic leadership to improve our practices and our student outcomes. Through our current consultative relationship with them, what has emerged for various school sites, what has emerged as their strategic focus has been to increase student engagement. And that actually applies both academically and in school culture kinds of ways that we were discussing earlier in relation to the school safety plans. So project-based learning is one of those areas of practice that we know investing in and developing our teachers' practice in will have tremendous benefit. We know there's a lot of teacher interest and teacher demand for it. Again, it's not new to us. We have teachers who have participated in the Buck Institute, which is the most renowned institute for training on project-based learning. And this contract, because it does exceed the $10,000 limit, just barely, comes before you. And what its approval means is that it will be one of the offerings that we will be putting forward to teachers among several in the week immediately following our graduation and promotion ceremonies for teachers to voluntarily participate in. We're moving forward only with the introductory, the PBL 101 workshop at this point, but there are options. If you looked at the attachment, it's really just the first couple pages that are relevant. The rest is just a kind of menu of different possible ways and services that Buck Institute offers. I would be interested specifically in those follow-up visitations that can happen during the course of the school year once teams of teachers are implementing project-based learning. And those have lower costs associated with them. But just to kind of comment on the broad spectrum of services offered. So I told you more than just about this contract, but I wanted to give it some context both back to things we talked about more broadly with professional learning as well as some of the specific plans we have for June.
Board members, any questions? Mrs. Moten?
Yeah, I just have a question with regards to the outcomes. Is this new and we don't have an evaluation like history, or is it incorporated in this type of program for professional development? Is there like
so you mean being able to measure student outcomes related to project-based learning?
Or not necessarily student outcomes,
Buck?
but the Buck and the teacher outcomes.
What I don't know that we have anything that would discreetly connect in a correlation fashion in a way that I think you're asking about. The implementation of project-based learning with specific learner outcomes. Lots of anecdotal and informal evidence. I don't know, Dr. Wagnitz here, she would actually help to spearhead project-based learning as a pioneer site at La Cuesta and Alta Vista. So she may be able to offer more. I don't want to put her on the spot, but she definitely was a pioneer in that sense. And then also Dr. Dradi, my predecessor, was someone who helped kind of lead teacher leaders down a path that other than just at La Cuesta of beginning to implement project-based learning.
Okay, thank you.
Are you going to, do you want more, Mrs. Moten? Or
yes, were you just going to make a comment?
Yeah, okay. So, and what specifically was it?
No.
I will tell you that there are things, as the mic comes on, that we see in student data. We were just talking about the California Healthy Kids Survey data and other kinds of school climate data, and actually our EOS student data also. That's in the Equal Opportunity Schools student surveys, where students are specifically telling us so it's more input data than it is output data at this point, but they're specifically telling us things about, I'm more engaged when I'm doing hands-on projects. I'm more engaged when I get to choose the thing that I study. Things that are intuitive to us, but we don't just go on the fact that that's common sense. We do have pretty powerful student data from a couple of sources around the rationale for wanting to pursue more learning when it comes to project-based learning.
Yeah, I would just add that without going into is this on?
No.
It is on.
Oh, it is for him. He cares, yeah.
That when we launched it for Alta Vista originally, the idea was how are we going to do the Common Core? in independent study. And so it was a way for students to really independently dive into a topic, an example being disasters. There are natural disasters. There are also man-made disasters, such as the Great Depression. And students were able to, we were able to cover science, social studies, math, and English, and elective credit, all within that project-based learning. And it really was a deep dive for the teachers to learn how to do that, but it was, for us, a natural fit on the independent study front. And then also opening Quetzal and having 15 students in one classroom all day. And but we did Buck Institute, I think it would be 3 years ago this summer, with Alta Vista, La Cuesta, and then folks from the different academies across the district.
Right, thank you. And I appreciate the sometimes the anecdotal is just as important, if not more important, in terms of the paper evaluation piece, because you have the actual action right there immediately going on. So I appreciate that. I was just wondering what the outcome, or how do we evaluate the service. So appreciate that comment.
I'll offer one more thing to help with that. It has been our sort of more alternative pockets, whether it be Alta Vista, Quetzal, but also the other teams of teachers that have used this to a high degree are Academy for Success teachers. Over time, I hope to make you even more familiar with what happens in Academy for Success. So what this represents to me is the success of teams of teachers doing this in settings like Alta Vista or Academy for Success is really starting to permeate to general education teachers whose interest has become piqued in it, who are seeking ways to deliver interdisciplinary content, to engage students more. Academy for Success teams do have lots of student data about improved outcomes with their pedagogy, and lots of other techniques they use also. But yeah,
thank you.
Dr. Reed.
Yeah, I have no question that project-based learning is an amazing opportunity for teachers and students. I guess in just looking at this, my question kind of dovetails a little bit with Ms. Sims-Moten, and that is, I know you're suggesting that in June, teachers are going to choose whether they want to do this activity. And so in order for something, as we know, to be sustainable, these teachers may take it up, they may have that workshop, but then I think it's really important the follow through, and like, where are they going to get the support? So they'll get this training, and just in my experience, sometimes it's overwhelming, and the process of being able to have collaborative groups working together, team teaching around it, observation. So I'm wondering if in this opportunity that we're offering these teachers, is there specifically a plan as to how to keep it sustainable and how to share the wealth of what they're doing? Because I think it's really important for other teachers to learn about what other teachers are doing and learn about the pitfalls, what worked, what didn't, and so I'm just curious if that's part of this plan, and do the teachers, or will the teachers, if indeed they become sort of the experts, then I guess the plan would be perhaps having some sort of stipend or opportunity that they could do mini trainings, that we wouldn't necessarily need to bring them in, but we could utilize the teachers as cohorts to support this. So I guess I'm just kind of saying, what's the long-term goal? It's a great opportunity. Where are we taking it?
That's a great question. I'm going to try and give you a cogent and succinct answer. The project-based learning, and even more broadly, process-based learning, is something that has universal appeal and application. In fact, our CTE teachers have been very effectively, in some cases, been doing project-based learning well before anybody coined the phrase project-based learning. So we already have, in some ways, local experts. We just haven't called them that or referred to them that way. What is really happening in this, I hope, has come through from Dr. Ramirez and me in our presentations about instructional materials and professional learning, is that we've got different subject matters at very different places engaged in very different kinds of hard work. And so what will most likely happen in an opportunity like June is that we'll really need, let's say you're a math teacher, this would not be something that we would not want we would want math teachers to feel like they could participate in this, but we believe that our math teachers are going to be pretty busy with deciding how to implement and begin to utilize new instructional materials. That's what our prediction is. And so we have those kinds of really thoughtful plans as we think about all teachers that sort of align to different subjects. This is an offering that we know the reason this is coming before me and then ultimately before you is because teachers are asking for this. So teachers who may not be in the throes of an instructional materials adoption or in the throes of a framework overhaul are hearing about this, hearing already from their colleagues, and are saying, can I do something like this? This, for $11,000, gives 35 teachers, and we'll see who they are. This exposure and training and learning, which is a deep dive. It's 3 days of training with, as I said, my interest in following up. I think what will happen in June is, depending on who participates, natural teams will form. If you can look at the cost of services a little bit about how they really believe in modeling the project experience for the learners. And then they have a very tailored way of supporting that. So it's difficult to comment on that in specific until we see who are the participants. But I can definitely assure you that both in the spirit on the part of the Buck Institute and the spirit on the part of the leaders of Ed Services of SB Unified, we will be very strategic about wanting to amplify the learning that happens. And the reason I'm so confident about that is because it's not being imposed from us. It's actually this ask is coming from the teachers.
So I would just add that having the opportunity to have the space for the teachers to have those conversations would be really important in this process, which I'm sure you know that and well aware. I just would make sure that happens, because when they don't have the time to really practice and share what they're doing around it, then it becomes more challenging.
We're in a great spot, having just had our second of 2 student-free days this school year, knowing we have 3 more coming next year. I mean, it's so great to know that that's not done, that we have actually even an additional day. So lots of the conversations yesterday were about, and then next year in August we can do this, and then October that, and then April. So we'll have to think about where we are this time next year and what happens in 19, but we're in a great spot for that for this year.
Can I offer one closing comment on that? Next board meeting, you're going to receive a report about implementation of personalized learning in our district, and specifically at La Cumbre Junior High and La Cuesta Continuation High School. And the model that these 2 schools are adopting has been developed by the Summit Public School charter system, and at the foundations of their model is project-based learning. And so, if we just try to add project-based learning on a traditional classroom environment, it ends up being like an end-of-semester experience. I mean, that's how I did it. It was not very good, but I didn't have the Buck Institute training. To redesign a course and experience where project-based learning is one of the dominant instructional models, and then how do you teach all the content, you'll get a really interesting overview of the Summit model. And so it's good to do these trainings. It gets people aware. I mean, it sets the foundations for when people want to tackle a very different way of looking at teaching and learning. The Buck Institute is the premier organization that teaches you about how to think as a teacher about project-based learning. But next board meeting, you'll get a glimpse of 2 schools that are going to kind of set aside their instructional model and adopt a very different model. And you'll see the foundations of personalized learning there. So look forward to sharing that.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the Buck Institute for Education proposal?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And that passes unanimously. We are pulling item G6 because that ended up being a repeat of item C7, so we already reported out the conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation. So item G7, board action on student discipline education code in case number 2016-17-35.
In case number 2016-17-35, I move to accept expulsion with enforcement suspended for 1 school year, which ends January 2018.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That passes unanimously. And then item G8, board action on student discipline, Ed Code 48918, case number 2016-17-38.
In case number 2016-17-38, I move to accept the full expulsion for one school year, which ends January 2018.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. That passes unanimously. All right, that brings us to the end of our action agenda, and per our protocol, if I don't have any disagreement from board members, we're going to take a 5-minute break before we move on to the H report discussion agenda. Okay, let's move now to our report discussion agenda. First up, item up is H1, discussion of new course approval. This is culinary arts. Ms. Carey.
So me again. I had said to you that you would see several of these coming your way in the spring. This is one I'm really excited to bring forward because it's definitely in alignment with all the things that we're doing to try to develop and streamline our career technical education offerings. We have, as you know from the report from Veronica Rogers, who's overseeing the implementation of the CTEG, or the Career Technical Ed Incentive Grant, 25 pathways in our district, and they are at various stages of development. Some of them are highly developed. Others really do exist on the ground, but haven't been formalized into pathways that we, can then subsequently report to the state on as legitimate pathways through which a student in completing a 3-course sequence has really demonstrated proficiencies that contribute to classifying that student college career ready. Culinary arts is one of those. It exists, and I want to highlight that this is coming forward, even though it's being originated with personnel at one site. It represents a collaboration of the culinary arts instructors at all 3 high school sites. So you'll see that in the upper right-hand corner of the first page. And actually, it was surprising to me, who's not an expert in the culinary arts, how difficult it was for them and how well and productively they struggled through coming to alignment about what culinary arts 1 is. And I think it's just because they come from different industry experience and have different interests and areas of expertise. But they did do that hard work, and they are putting forward for your approval a course titled Culinary Arts 1. It's intended to be the first, and that you will be seeing 2 more. You'll be seeing, this is the introductory level 1. They are now working on the concentrator, or the year 2 course, and they will ultimately be bringing forward to a capstone course. So I don't know if, I'm here to answer questions that you may have. I'm here to answer questions you may have.
Okay, any questions, board? Mr. Ulloa.
So first, I'm sorry, so is Culinary Arts 1 supposed to be the full year, or is it semester long?
Yeah, students can take it as a semester or year-long course. I saw that box was, it was ambiguous because it was left unchecked. Students can enroll it for either one, but in order to be considered, we encourage students to take it for a full year because we are pushing students toward completing full years of courses, period, but also completing multiple years within an established CTE pathway.
So students that started in the fall with Culinary Arts 1 through June, they would just keep building?
Correct.
Okay. And then another question, sorry to hog the mic. I noticed that it's to run the cafes, and I noticed that it's DP San Marcos and Santa Barbara. DP already has Chargers Cafe that, from my understanding, the students run. How is this different from what's going on already at DP?
So what's different is this is, as you can see, it's pending approval, A through G approval as a G elective. We are seeking it. Part of what happens upon your approval is that it starts to legitimize a course. It's been offered as an elective, but not necessarily elective, that is being elevated to a legitimate and substantial career technical education course, compliant with A through G, and also compliant with the CDE's new standards for career technical education and pathway completion.
And I think another difference might be that it would then also be consistent across all 3 sites.
That's what I was highlighting earlier, is that's actually a huge, we haven't always had culinary arts at all 3 schools, or it has ebbed and flowed. The fact that it is well established now at all 3 schools fairly recently, in fact, and that these 3 instructors have worked together to bring this forward is really significant.
Ms. Capps.
I just want to say hooray, because this is such a great trend and so important, especially in a town like this where tourism is so strong and our restaurants are so robust, and it's such a great pathway, and especially the given City College and their very good and well-respected culinary arts program. So this is just a great opportunity for kids, and the more the better. So thanks.
Dr. Reed?
I just want to put a plug in for the Santa Barbara Ed Foundation is actually utilizing the culinary departments for all of the schools. So, so they're doing a great job.
They are. I commend their food to you, too. I have eaten at all three, so when you're on campuses, you should, it's a fun place to see students at work. And the food's great.
I just have a question. Do they cater?
They do.
Okay. Outside catering?
All right.
Outside,
They've catered for Ed Foundation events, and yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I don't know if we have capacity to like really super take that on, but so I was thinking, oh, we should have a website dedicated to that, but maybe not. Is it okay if this comes back on a consent agenda the next time? Okay, great. Next up is H2. This is a report on the sale of the first issuance of $70 million in general obligation bonds for measures I 2016 and J 2016. Ms. Chate.
Good evening, board members. I'll make this quick. So on March 21st, the Santa Barbara Unified District sold $70 million worth of municipal bonds. The interest rates on the municipal bonds were positive. This stable market, combined with the strong credit in the name of Santa Barbara Unified, created a significant investor demand for all district bonds and all maturities. This means, for example, if we had $3 million offering for 2032, and Morgan Stanley received in excess of $12 million worth of offers on the $3 million worth of bonds. This is what we call oversubscribed. This is a really good thing to be oversubscribed. This translates to Morgan being able to lower the interest rates, and because of terrific demand and the strong interest rate in the environment. The lower the rates on the bonds, the more bond proceeds are to the districts and to the projects. The bonds will be finalized or closed on April 11th, and at that time, the bond proceeds will be wired transferred to the county. We also, I just want to put a little dig on our Southern California, Santa Barbara to our north San Francisco. We outdid San Francisco Unified on our bond proceeds. Just little bragging rights there.
Okay, at the next meeting, right, of the CBOs?
Yes, absolutely.
As long as we beat Santa Monica, Malibu. Dr. Drotti.
Thank you.
Well, don't go anywhere. There might be questions on this. Any questions on the sale? All right. Well, now you can go somewhere. This is great news for taxpayers and great news for our students. So that's really wonderful. Thank you, Ms. Chate. I appreciate that update. At this point, we're on item H3. It's already 9 o'clock, and we have a few more items that'll take some time, and then we need to return to the consent items designated for discussion. My suggestion is actually that we pull item H5, the Board Policy Personnel 4000 series, since that could take some time to work through, and bring them back to report discussion for our next meeting. Board members, are you okay with that?
So moved.
I second it.
All right, so there's some agreement around that. Okay, so at this point, let's move to item H3, Facility Bond Program Report. Mr. Matsuoka.
You can just click from there. So this, you can see by the date, this was delivered to the board a while ago, September 27th. 4 of you were not on the board yet. I think some of you were attending meetings, you might have heard this, but now that you are voting on soon $70 million worth of projects over the next 2 years, we thought it would be helpful for you to hear some of the terminology, get a framework. I'll go through this as fast or as slow as you want. The narrative provided the background. These are just the highlights. You're going to hear a lot of these terms coming to you in contracts. Okay? So, here we go. I want to comment about the bottom one, that the district stays in the primary role of owner of all projects and outcomes. Those other bullets are important. This one's been important in my experience, and it involves more work and ownership by our team. The team is Ms. Jate, Mr. Hedyuk, Mr. Vizzolini, and myself, and we have posted a program manager position to help us deal with capacity. What's important about that one bullet is, you know, ultimately the taxpayers are going to turn to us on the expenditures of this money. They're not going to yell at a contractor. They're not going to yell at a CM firm or an architect. They're going to come to us. And so I just feel like, I feel strongly that we should take a strong role in the process. It's on the edge of managing a bond of this size. $193 million is big, but it's over 6 years, so it's manageable. But we will be involved in a lot of the, you know, when decisions get into the $1 million range, I want our staff to be involved in those. I don't like turning those over to an architect or to a program management company. The other thing is they're not educators. They don't think about classrooms and about how we need to change instruction. So next slide. So here's the key consultants. 6 architects were selected, I think, about 18 months ago. So they went through a process, and it's a good pool. It's a deep pool. I like the blend of internal or in-town architects. We have 2. And then a 3rd in Ventura, and then the other 3 are sort of statewide teams. The CM firms, you did receive and vote on the 3 firms that we have. Now, the program management company is a company that you would hire to sort of run and organize everything. And the local name that was serving Santa Barbara Unified was Telecu. Okay, so there are lots of firms. You could hire Kitchell, you could hire Turner. There's some big companies out there. But then the next slide talks about some of the costs of a project. So as you watch contracts come before you, well, let's say a project has a budget of $10 million. All right, well, let's make it easier. $100,000. $75,000 will pay for the actual construction costs, and the $25,000 is for hiring the architect, the CM, paying fees, just all of the, I wouldn't say overhead, because you couldn't do the project without those consultants, but you'll hear the term hard costs versus soft costs, okay? The next slide. We presented 3 different management structures for running our bond program. Option 1 is to use a program management firm to design and run and oversee the entire program. The second is where we run the program more ourselves, but with the strong support of CM firms to actually run all of our projects. And the third option is you could try to run the entire bond program in-house by yourself. You would need a large team. I would say a small district where it's maybe a $10 million program, you might be able to do that. You'd still need a team. We recommended the middle tier, option 2, and you'll see some of the arguments on the next slide. So here's our team, and we have a future program manager. Okay, next slide. Oh, it was in the narrative. I didn't put it in a slide. Was there a slide that's got the... There is not. A program management firm, in my observation of school districts, will run about 2 to 4% of the total proceeds of the bond. I think that was the range that I put in the narrative. So at $193 million, just round that off to $200 million, on the low end, we'd be paying $4 million to a program management firm, and as high as $8 million. And having worked in facilities for 20 years as a site principal, superintendent, sometimes those program management firms, I don't know that you get your dollar's worth. I mean, that's a lot of money to give to for services, $4 to $8 million. We could get a lot of work done. My hesitancy with program management firms, having watched them, I've sat in projects with other districts on them, and it's almost like and they can be an extra party at the table when the architect is really the designer of the facility. And then when you go out to build it, it's the construction management firm that's driving the project. Now, a program manager could fill both roles, program management and construction management, but then there's additional fees. So having an external firm is an expensive way to run an entire bond program. So that's why we recommended option 2. There was a good discussion at that board meeting. I think it was 4 to 1 was the vote for option 2. So that's where the board landed. We have now proceeded to act on option 2. We've hired 3 CM firms. We've got projects in the pipeline. So you're going to see contracts on every project for an architect and then a construction management firm. You've already seen Peabody go by. Pretty soon we'll start getting some larger contracts like Santa Barbara Junior High is a really important project. It's big in dollar value, and we want to get that thing in design because we want to qualify for state money. So we've got an architect and a CM firm identified. We'll be bringing those contracts, I forget.
They're in negotiations right now.
Yeah. So, by the way, we put a fee structure out to these firms when they applied to work for us. He said, okay, here's our fee structure. And, we're getting a little conversation going with some of our firms, but, we let you know in advance, here's our fee structure. So there's an overview. Any questions?
Ms. Sims-Moton.
I would just ask, so the contracts that will be coming before us will be from these list of architects and firms that you've identified here? So otherwise, we wouldn't see anyone other than these that you've already identified?
Correct. Sometimes you will see a specialist, like, remember we asked the retainer contract for a structural engineer? Because we already came across something where we just needed a quick opinion. So we've got some of those contracts in place, but the majority will be from those 9 firms.
Any other comments or questions at this point? I just wanted to chime in with, so on Monday, I think we are hoping that Miss Bianchi, and I was mispronouncing her last name, it's Kleiman, right?
Kleiman.
Even though it's spelled Kleeman, and so that's going to torture us for a while. But we'll get there, right, Mr. Ulloa? And does she go by Ms. Kleiman or Bianchi Kleiman? Do we know? Okay, something to find out on Monday. All right, that would be good to know. So our new public information officer is coming in on Monday. And it is so important that we communicate around what we are doing with facilities on this. And I know that parents have questions. One of the things that the district has learned in the past is to have a quick something, at least something small on each site that's going on, so that there's a visible reminder that yes, we passed this bond, and this is how it's, even if it's something small, that this is happening on your school site, and thank you. And this is how it's benefiting your student, even though a lot of things will take some time to happen. I would hope that one of the early things that she does is get together with facilities and figure out a way for the principals to have some snapshot communication around what's going on at the school sites this summer, that can go through the principals to the PTAs and parents, but maybe goes directly from the district to parents in general, because there's so many parents that will miss a parent organization meeting. So just having that out there, I think, would be really, really a great way to start off measures I and J. So, so she has some work on Monday. But thank you. I think that this is really helpful, and good to hear again, because there were already things that I'd forgotten, including how the vote went. So I appreciate that. That was an interesting reminder. All right. Thank you. Yeah.
We have not explained the different delivery methods. I'm going to watch my team back there about general contractor delivery versus multiple prime. I don't think we've explained that. I think it's important for us to explain that. We'll try to get a quick report together. Basically, the difference is we could hire a general contractor, which is actually really problematic in school construction. So it's one of the most litigated ways of trying to build stuff. We've got multiple prime where we become the general contractor, so to speak, but that's why we hire a construction management firm. And then we let out all the subcontracts for like concrete and demolition, electrical. So like Peabody, I think there's 22 packages. So we need to get you front-loaded because you're going to see some future board meeting with 22 contracts. And you won't want to read like every page. So what we'll do is we'll bring in probably Craig, because he's our contracts attorney, and just walk you through the structure of one of those, because you're going to see lots of these go by. So multiple prime results in a lot of paperwork for us. But once you get the idea of one contract, then you'll just approve all of them. Okay, but I think we should present that as just a structure. And then leaseback got in trouble legally for a while. I think Santa Barbara used it very nicely.
A lot, and it went really well.
It's a great delivery method. Craig says they've worked out most of the legal concerns and that it's a valid delivery method. And for some of our big projects, we should probably present the structure of leaseback.
Yeah.
I think all of the law firms have figured out how to meet the, some of the concerns that were raised in Fresno and other places. But we used it just a little bit in Milpitas. It's a great model. And I think on a big project, it could be really good. We almost would have to make some of those decisions quickly on like Santa Barbara Junior High. So we'll do some homework for you.
I think it might be helpful to take this report, add in a section on multiple prime, and then add in a section on leasebacks and anything else that you can think of, and just have this as like a reference that we can go back to easily. So if we're reviewing a contract and there's some term that we don't understand, we can just go back to this document and kind of use it as a little glossary for our information in the future.
We actually should have a school construction glossary because you're going to hear just tons of acronyms. The ed side's pretty bad. School construction's equally bad. Okay.
Great.
I just had a question on, sometimes we get contracts that are the work is already done, but the contract hasn't been signed. So sometimes I'm looking at that, some of the contracts here, we were ratifying and just trying to be sure, is there any liability that happens when the work is started, but we haven't quite got the contract through here yet?
That will not happen with a school construction contract. There's just too much liability at stake. We will get board approval of everything. Now, if it's like a $3,000 change order, we don't have to come back to you, but we will not allow work to begin until the board's approved it.
Okay, thank you.
Good to know. All right, that brings us to H4, Overcoming Implicit Bias, Equity Work in Santa Barbara. Mr. Matsuoka.
This work has been communicated out now for about the last 3 months. I thought it was time I caught the board up on it. Some of you have heard it at like Santa Barbara Ed Foundation meetings. I'm really excited about this work. I'm really proud of this work. I think it could make a huge difference on a really hard topic. And so, Ms. McBride is totally excited about this. We've shared it with TLAC. We really have some growing support and buy-in for this. So what is implicit bias? So I sent out a narrative. That narrative was written for you, but I've been sharing it for the last, month and a half with different stakeholder groups. So I've shortened the slide deck, and let me talk about this. So I heard a keynote presenter at a superintendent's conference. Her name was Kim Papillon, and she's an expert in implicit bias, and she has a really interesting background. She's trained as a litigator. She works with federal judges who demonstrate too much negative bias in their rulings. So she's like the person a judge gets sent to if you've not been a good judge. And these are federal judges, and they are not happy campers when they are sent to her. But the data of all their cases becomes the reason. And so she tells some really great stories. She's from Jamaica. She's African American. And so this is, I would say it's her life experience about experiencing bias. She presented the topic in a very, very compelling way. There's a really quick assessment tool. She used a PowerPoint slide deck, but it was very rapid fire. There were questions that you had to do some kind of analytical thinking, but there was this background information that was a reflection of color, which was really a reflection of race. And so she would put up images sometimes of a white person or a black person, and then ask you to think through a question that was either tipped towards a positive answer or a negative answer. And she just kept firing these questions. At first, we couldn't keep up. And I thought, what are we doing? I missed that one. And then after about 90 seconds of it, you start to get the rhythm of it. And then 30 seconds later, you go, oh my gosh, I shouldn't be able to answer these questions this way. Because when the background is white, it was easier to answer the positively oriented question. When the background was brown or black, you could answer the negatively oriented question faster. So then she pauses, and then she presents the national statistics about bias, about implicit bias versus explicit bias. And she's been doing this work for a long time, and she showed data that was actually really sobering, that we all have a bias. Now, what was really significant about that day, I was sitting next to a good friend of mine. His name's Dr. Orlando Smith. He's superintendent in New Haven Unified. I've known him for a long time, and he's African American. And when we paused, he just said, that was the most, significant experience I've had in a long time. Because here he is, he's black, and he could feel the bias that he had towards black people. You would think, he's African American, well, he should be like clean of those biases. Thing is, he grew up in America. He grew up here, and this bias comes at us from just every different corner. So ever since then, that was January of 16, I thought, how do we make sense of this, and how do we bring this into the work of a school district? So I was making plans to find somebody to unpack this in Milpitas and help my team make sense of it, and then life happens, and here I am, and I tell you, the foundations for this work are so good in Santa Barbara, because Santa Barbara's been talking about equity for a long time. I mean, we're so poised to do, I think, this building on the foundations of what Dr. Cash laid. I mean, he was a huge equity proponent. Dr. Dradi, and really a lot of people. It's not just those two. But they paved the way for, I think, some significant work. So I just made up a definition of implicit bias. It was sort of self-constructed. I did use a dictionary a little bit, but I added the word subconscious. It's to prejudge somebody based on appearances, skin color, race, gender, and it's usually an unfair prejudging. Now, the insidious part of this, it's subconscious. You're not even aware that you're doing it if you don't think about it. I mean, I had an experience, we were walking down the street in Brooklyn, and we were starting to go down the sidewalk, my wife and I think it was dark, and I would say a person of color popped out of this, I think it was a porta potty, and he said, don't go there. And I ignored him, because I thought, random African-American person on the streets of Brooklyn, dark. And then he said, you can't go that way. It's blocked. There's construction. I felt really embarrassed that I ignored him because of this really quick decision bias. That, gosh, I felt bad. I didn't apologize to him, but there it is. It's inside of me. So the next slide Why should we approach this work of equity using this strategy of implicit bias? I've been in a lot of trainings in my career. I've listened to speakers who come in and say to a room full of educators, "You're all racist." And he's correct, but in terms of helping us overcome our bias and our attitude, I've not seen that be an effective teaching strategy. You can make it a little softer, saying that the institutions we have institutional racism, so now it's depersonalized. Now the school's racist, but at least we're not calling you a racist, but it's a little better. But again, I haven't seen it, move the needle. Where I think implicit bias could be a very powerful strategy is it helps us realize we have a bias with, I guess, removing some of the blame of where it came from. Because where did it come from? It came from watching TV when you were 5 years old. It came from all the comic books, all the stories that we heard. I was even looking at old subway advertisements in the New York train station. I snapped some pictures because in every ad, it's a white person. And I was going to throw up this one image. It was for hair color. It said, "If I only had one life to live, I want to live it as a blonde." I mean, if you saw that today, I hope we would all go, whoa. But back in the 50s, that's what you did. I mean, it's everywhere. So if we could help our staff, especially our teachers, our counselors, really all of us, to realize that we walk around with the bias, and then how do we address it? So the next slide talks about two partners. Dr. Carmel Saeed, I wrote in the narrative, she's a local psychology professor and really is becoming an expert in implicit bias. And then Jared Schwartz, we know well from Just Communities. And so I've been in conversation with the two of them. And then Dr. Reed connected me with some leaders from our local ADL group. And that's right, you couldn't make the meeting. Were you there?
I was out of town.
And to hear their 110-year history of working on, bias and racism, I think they're going to be an important partner with us because this is a big lift. And I think Just Communities, while really skilled, they're not a huge organization to do this kind of training. So these are initially the two partners that we're going to work with. The contracts are in motion to do this work, and John Clark from the Bauer Foundation is ready to support it. So the funding's going to come from, I think, some of our foundations. So the work ahead, and in that narrative, there were some, I would say, some kind of edgy lists of data that we want to collect about our staff. And the first group that I tested it off, it was Cabinet, but it was really TLAC. And because it's teachers from across our district, I presented it, and we talked through the concerns. The data is going to live in Westmont's servers. It's never going to be on ours. All of the analysis will be done by an external organization. I mean, I will just assure our staff that we will not hold the data. And if you're nervous about it, you don't have to participate in the survey and the process. But I'm hopeful, just based on initial responses, people really want to explore this. I did note in the narrative, this was the work of Dr. Saeed, that in her research, she says it's really hard to change the bias of an adult. I was hopeful that we could actually start to knock that implicit bias down in all of us. She said, it's ingrained so deep in us, the best we can do is moderate the impact of our bias in our day-to-day interactions with people. So there is room for improvement in the experience of our students, and I would say with adults. But trying to change our view of the world, it's really hard. At first I was kind of bummed to hear that, because I wanted to actually lower my bias, our bias, but it's you'd have to relive your life. And also you'd almost have to relive it in a different culture that's not quite as biased as America. But by the way, I think every country has biases. We're not alone in discriminating against people. It's just whoever has power maintains that through images. So the pilot phase will be this spring. We need to get this moving pretty quickly. There's about, I think, 100 of us who will participate in the pilot phase and then participate in the test training in June. That's just to learn about the process. And then the goal is to invite every staff member across the district to participate voluntarily in the survey in right early August. And then we'll start to train some of our staff. We'll have to limit the initial training just from capacity reasons. One of the great questions from a TLAC member is, so what's the follow-up going to be? Kind of goes back with that Buck PBL questions, like, do we just go to a training and then we're good? No, we've got to figure out ways to do follow-up. And that's where I was encouraged with the conversation with ADL, because I think they have capacity to provide that ongoing conversation. It can't be just a one-day training. You know, we have to visit this topic over and over. So there's the overview. It's launching. We got to get some contracts to you for your approval, but this is going to start in motion pretty soon with our district leadership team, TLAC, and we've invited our guidance counselors to be part of that pilot group. So, questions, comments? That was fast.
Ms. Capps?
Just, that sounds wonderful. Just curious how it's building on past efforts. I know with AHA and Just Communities, have they been mostly just focused on students, and this is now staff and teachers, or just fill me in on kind of what came before?
I'll share my experience, and then maybe others can chime in. IEE for me last October was a really significant week. It wasn't a training. It was an experience, and I saw what Just Communities has developed as an experiential framework about racism, about equity. They do touch on bias, but that's not the focus of that week. So awareness of the equity issues will help you be more open to looking inside of yourself at your biases. And I am realistic that some people are going to receive that feedback and go, I'm good. I'm comfortable. I kind of like my worldview. And others that, are ready to change how they interact with people. So
I would say just on the IEE piece, and I hope that that's going to continue to be something that's offered, and board members, if you haven't done it, I highly recommend making the time to do it. That it kind of gives you an opportunity to do this work. If you're not here at all, it's a first step, and just very powerful but different. So that's good to hear. Any other questions or comments on this right now, Mr. Ulloa?
I just want to say I appreciate the efforts, and I appreciate what Just Communities has been doing with our schools and our staff. And one conversation that I've been having a lot recently is building empathy. If you don't know what other people are going through or don't understand where they might be coming from, you can't really empathize with somebody and try to serve them. So again, I really appreciate the efforts around this, and I look forward to hopefully, be invited to participate in some of these trainings, or just even come in on it, because everyone has something to learn. So thank you.
Mrs. Moten.
Yeah, I was just sitting here thinking about even just the emotion that's just welling up in me right now in terms of that. And so I appreciate that's where it's coming from. And again, being an adult and have it already ingrained in you, but having it, be out front and increase your awareness of what that is. That's like a first step, even if people feel I'm good. But if you're taking the first step to even come in and experience it, that's huge. Mm-hmm. That's huge within itself. But I was just really, just taken back by just the emotion, just by that whole piece, having, all at some point have been on the other side of being biased against or prejudiced against. And so I appreciate this effort, and I look forward to also as my just said, yes, you know your name. So, so just being able to, to experience it as well. I mean, to have a really good, awareness as board members in terms of that and how we are in the community. And I certainly think that this community is ready and kind of poised for that. So here, the Bauer Foundation come in and support that. I work with them long-term in First Five and trying to get equity here. So I think it's a great organization that's come in, and I don't foresee that many won't follow. So I think it'll be a good community piece as well. So thank you.
Dr. Reed?
Yeah, so I think it's fabulous. And so I'm excited. And I think, just to go back, like you mentioned, you said, I mean, ultimately, there's going to be an 8-hour workshop that's going to follow up the survey training. And so my question was, okay, like you mentioned, so then what? So I think that the big picture opportunity and how you foresee it going forward is really crucial, I think, if we're going to strategize and ensure that this becomes something that is sustainable within the district, that we can continue on and support our teachers around this topic. The other point I wanted to make is also in terms of the evaluation measures. You mentioned in your narrative that there would be evaluation of the academic success or whatever in the fall. And so it kind of raised a kind of flag in my thinking as to how are we going to really see from one 8-hour workshop something, obvious in the fall. So I guess I would want to know, what is it that we're going to be seeing, and can we actually link it to that 8-hour workshop? So I guess I'm just saying it's I just want us to make sure that we're really looking at the overall big picture and then the implementation plan and how it's going to unfold. But the idea itself, I think is fantastic. So, and I think it's an amazing opportunity for our district. And so I commend you for bringing this forward.
Let me comment a little bit about evaluation of efforts, because I can hear it in your many questions even tonight. It's like, what is the cause and effect of, like, the Buck Institute about this? Raising human beings is not if we do X, then we get Y. Because our youth experience 15 different factors in their life. We could bring in a reading strategy in a classroom where the teacher went through implicit bias training. It may have been the reading strategy that got the outcomes and not necessarily the bias. But that's why we've got some professionals. They'll tease out the data. We're looking for micro changes. But we do have to recognize in our business, it's really hard to isolate because we did this, we get this outcome. Because, teaching is a really messy business. There's a lot of moving parts to it. But I do believe if we record who went through the implicit bias training and just look at the big picture, was there an impact on, like, attendance? That would be a really simple one. Like, if we see a bump in attendance, could be because of the training. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, and we'll look forward to seeing that unfold and being as much a part of it as we can. That brings us to item I, returning to consent items designated for discussion, and I think we have 3 left to look at. Yes. So first up is E9, ratification of special education contracts for April 4th, 2017. Mrs. Moten.
Yes, the question I had on this was that the fiscal impact from the staff report is showing 40,000, but they don't add up to 40,000. So I was just trying to figure out that discrepancy.
I can answer that. In fact, I thought you would answer that because Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. I can answer that. In fact, I added it up. I said, well, this doesn't count for the 40,000, but there is David Gilbertson is 5,000, so you add that to that, and then there's another one that's 14,000. So when you add those together, it does come up with the total amount.
So
they're not listed on that.
Oh, okay.
It was a settlement agreement that were separate from this.
Okay.
Okay. So what does that mean? that there's, you said there was a settlement
Yes,
agreement?
it was a settlement agreement for one of the case that we spoke tonight, and that was, I think, an IEE, which is Independent Educational Evaluation from David Gilbertson, and his cost was $5,000. Let's see.
So essentially, what you've done is the entire amount of the ratification of special education contracts for today is for $40,000.
Yes.
But because those ones are under $10,000, although there's one I think that is under $10,000 that's on the list.
There's one for 14,000 that's not there, you just said, right?
Yes, yes, the 14,000 is a Lindenwood Bell service contract, and it was left off from there. And
Okay.
then David Gilbertson was an IEE, and that was also left out, and that was 5,000.
So that's 1929.
Yeah, it's 14,694, if you add that, and then 5,000 to that amount, it should come up with 40,000.
34, yeah. Yeah, pretty close. So, just that there's some left off. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Can we get it, so, I mean, obviously, we can ratify these tonight, but can we get it so that this is amended to include the missing contracts?
Yes.
And with that, are you willing to bring a motion forward?
Yes, a motion to approve, I don't have it up in front of me.
It's the ratification of special education contracts for April 4th, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And that passes unanimously, moving us to item E13. This is approval of the proposal for engineering, geology, and geotechnical engineering services for the Hillside Stabilization Project at McKinley Elementary School. And that was Mr. Hetjunk.
Yeah, I just had a question. Is this recent movement, or has it been ongoing? Have we been watching it? What happened?
It's been ongoing for a number of years.
Wow.
And depending on what's happened weather-wise, with erosion, we had some heavy rains. In the past, there was a sewer line on that hill that split open and washed some of the soil away. The sewer line is no longer in that hill. It's been rerouted when we redid the sewer work there at McKinley about 4 or 5 years ago. And with every large rain, or with every instance where a drainage channel gets clogged and water comes over that hillside erodes and is starting to move. And sooner or later, we need to address it, or we're going to lose part of that playground area, and the hillside's going to creep closer to the school building.
So is there some temporary structure in place until we can get it corrected?
We should be okay. I think we're addressing the problem in time, where even with some heavy rains, we'll still be able to address the problem before we get too close to the building. This is step one of addressing the problem. This is going to help us determine what type of design we're going to have to do. And so it's kind of a preliminary investigation before our civil engineer gives us a proposal for design.
Okay, thank you. That was my question. I move approval of this contract.
Is there a second?
I second it.
All those in favor? Aye. That passed unanimously. And that brings us to E14, approval of agreement for architectural services for the boiler replacement project at McKinley Elementary School. Mr. Hetjunk.
Hi, and my question, thank you. My question was, this was regards to a boiler replacement. I was just wondering, was this relative to the boiler that we're saying in a PO 173595? I didn't know if it was two different POs or it's related to that, because that came on the consent agenda.
Let me look at the PO list a second.
Okay.
And which PO number was this?
It is 173595.
I'm sorry, I didn't see that on the facilities backup page.
Okay, it was under the approval of the purchase orders, which was, I think that was on the Business and Finance E7.
Okay, let me go back to business and finance.
Okay.
I don't see it there either, I'm sorry.
173, hold on 1 second. Well, yeah, make me go in there and figure this out. I don't know if it was on the report, 173,595. Because there was a boiler on there on approval of the
It's under Fund 28.
Oh, thank you.
Kruger Benson is the vendor from March 14th for $490,909.
Yeah. So I don't know if that was the same one.
The general comments are architectural services, boiler replacement. It's not the 10,000 and over, actually, it's the other purchase order report.
Yeah.
Definitely not that. It's the same agenda item, the purchase order report. It's agenda item E7, approval of purchase order report for March 7th, 2017. And it's the second one that says purchase order report 4.4.17. Without the 10,000 and over.
Yep.
I wonder if we have we have two agenda attachments, and you only, it looks like you only have one. Oh,
Okay.
so that explains the confusion.
Okay.
But is that something that you could get?
The purchase order was for?
It was for $490,000. It says for architectural services for boiler replacement.
Was it at McKinley?
It doesn't say. It just says. It just says that it's under
It was
Fund 28.
probably a purchase order for a project that was previously approved. It could have been Santa Barbara High School.
Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe now, that PO shouldn't come back to you on that list if it's already board approved. Typically, when we say it's already been board approved, so you don't have to see it a second time, because that gets confusing. We've been working on that. But something of that dollar amount, I would say, was probably the Santa Barbara High School boiler that you approved a few meetings ago.
Okay. I was just trying to make the connection between the two.
We're doing boilers at 4 different schools.
Okay.
And heating systems.
And they're done by the same vendor or different vendors? Will they be done by the same vendor?
Yeah. So they, 3 of them will be with Kruger Benson Zimmer, and 1 of them will be with LPA Architects.
Okay. All right, just trying to make the connection between the two, because it wasn't clear. Thank you.
Are you ready to?
I move approval of the request.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. And just for some board feedback at this point, because sometimes I know that if we have questions about things like this, you'd love to hear from us on Friday. And you very rarely will hear from us on Friday. And sometimes we don't catch them until the meeting itself or morning of, when we have questions like this. How late is too late to send you an email and say, oh, by the way, that thing on the consent agenda, would you still like to have a heads up ahead of time if we can send you an email? Or is it okay? Because, sometimes things are going to happen like this where it's just like, we'll just get information from you later, just to not put you on the spot right now, but just to know that we need information, like we are going to be waiting for information from Ms. Carey on those ones.
And I have it. Yes to the typo question, and yes, President Parker was right about the 500 students was the original quote listed in September. The actual amended quote is for 400 students, the 36,000.
The answer to your big picture question, I would say, if you see something and you have a question, if it's information or if you feel like there's mistakes, just email the right cabinet member directly, just copy me. And, when is it too late? Probably like 4 o'clock, the day of the board meeting. It starts getting a little late, but, any heads up that we can, if we can clear up the question in advance, it's better. So whenever you probably collect those along the way as you read through the board agenda, and if you see questions, this team's ready to respond to your questions.
Great, but also understand that sometimes, it's perfectly, we're still going to be like this and bring it up at the meeting
That's
itself.
fine, too.
And it's okay to not know. All right, with that brings us to coming events. So this is an off-cycle board meeting, Tuesday the 4th. So noting that we are not meeting on the second Tuesday of the month, Tuesday the 11th. And instead, our next meeting will be on Tuesday, April 25th. And I think that we're getting close to having some special meetings. So, like retreats. I'm not sure where we are with the city council. Those things are all lurking out there, so just be aware.
The joint meeting with city council is scheduled for April 19th, and I think we've checked with all of your schedules.
So the next meeting is actually April 19th, not April 25th.
Well, the April 19th would be a special meeting. It's a joint meeting with Santa Barbara City Council.
Hopefully that's already on all of our calendars, right? Right?
I couldn't make it because I'm teaching.
Right.
Right, and we went many cycles with city administrators, so we picked this date.
Yeah. So that's Wednesday, April 19th.
From 4 to 6 p.m.
And typically I teach Thursday. I had to move it because of the Ed Foundation.
And then I think we finally found a board retreat date, which is Wednesday, May 3rd. I think Carol or Sandra, one of you, worked through the doodle, and we found a rare date where we could all be together.
So can I ask for the City of Santa Barbara meeting, is that here or there?
I believe
It's over there?
it's over there.
Okay, so on Garden Street? The place that we usually meet? De La Guerra. That's different, okay.
Yeah, City Hall.
And will there be an agenda that comes out, or how do we prepare for that?
Yes, it will be a publicly noticed meeting. Paul Casey and I have been working on the agenda. It will be fairly high level. It's really a chance for both boards to kind of hear from staffs about projects that overlap.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, and you said that was 4 to 6:30 on April 19th?
4 to 6.
Sorry, 4 to 6.
So, well, I'll have an opportunity to get the documents from that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm glad we talked that through. And we, do we have any future agenda items at this point that anybody wants to bring up? Dr. Reed?
Well, we had talked about the, and I think we were waiting for Dr. Wagenet, but the idea of looking at our programs and evaluating the programs that we have in place. We talked about that as a potential agenda item.
I think it would, and definitely, that's something we're looking to do. Are you wanting to review all the programs we have in place, or look at specific programs? That would give more clarity.
How would you like to approach it? I mean, ultimately, we want to have, I guess, an understanding. I mean, maybe like sort of a spreadsheet of the different programs that are in place and what evaluative measures are being taken.
Carrie's got it.
Right.
So we talked about we really need to build a process for how we evaluate external providers. Fran and I talked about, let's select one and figure out, by what criteria we're going to evaluate it, what's the report going to look like. I think we should do one and then present it to you and see if that model makes sense. We have a lot of providers. We could not evaluate all of them this spring, but I think, Fran's probably got a short list of some of our providers that we should start putting some evaluations out there. And it should be our evaluation, not the provider's evaluation.
And we are bringing to you, that first meeting in May, our restorative approaches evaluation, which is long overdue. Now that's an internal program that we do have some external partners. But I think in the meantime, before we bring that initial program evaluation, I can provide you a list of who those providers are, what programs we're going to be evaluating moving forward.
Thank you, that would be great. All right, if there's no objection from the rest of the board, at this point, I am going to adjourn this meeting, and we'll see you on April 19th.